I adjusted my tie for the 100th time, staring at my reflection in the hotel elevator's mirrored walls. The suit I wore cost more than most cars, but Steve would still find something to criticize. He always did. I'm Alexander Carter, though most people in the business world know me as A.J. Carter, CEO of Carter Innovations, but to my sister's husband, I'm just Alex, the family disappointment who does something with computers. The elevator doors opened to the grand ballroom of the Ritz-Carlton, where Steve's company was hosting their annual corporate gala. I wasn't invited, technically, but my sister Emma insisted I come, hoping to patch things up between Steve and me, as if that were possible. Alex, Emma waved from across the room, her designer dress sparkling under the chandeliers. Next to her, Steve's face darkened when he saw me. Even from a distance, I could see him whispering something to her, probably wondering why she'd invited the black sheep of the family. You actually came, Steve said as I approached, not bothering to hide his disdain. He looked me up and down, searching for something to mock. Nice suit, rental? Steve, Emma hissed, elbowing him. Be nice. What? I'm just surprised he cleaned up for once. Usually looks like he just rolled out of bed. I bit back a response. Emma didn't know about the contract. Neither did Steve, though he should have, considering he'd been trying to land it for months. Mr. Morrison wants to meet you, Emma said to Steve, nodding toward a group of executives across the room. He said something about that big deal you've been working on? Steve's chest puffed up immediately. The Harrison account, $2 million on the line. Biggest deal of the quarter. He straightened his tie, already moving toward the executives. Coming, dear? In a minute, Emma said. I want to catch up with Alex first. Steve's lip curled. Don't waste too much time. This is an important night for me. He glanced at me. Some of us have real careers to worry about. As Steve walked away, Emma turned to me with apologetic eyes. He's just stressed about this deal. He doesn't mean. Yes, he does. I cut her off. He's meant every insult for the past 5 years. Alex. It's fine, I'm used to it. I checked my phone, seeing a message from my assistant. Everything was in place. How about we get a drink? We made our way to the bar, where Emma ordered something complicated and I stuck with water. I needed a clear head for what was coming. So how's work? She asked, trying to sound casual. Still doing the computer thing? I had to smile at that. Even my own sister had no idea what I really did. Something like that. You know, Steve might be able to help you get a real job. His company is always hiring. I have a job, Emma. Of course you do. I just meant something more stable, with benefits and everything. Before I could respond, a commotion near the center of the room caught our attention. Steve was holding court with a group of executives, his voice carrying across the ballroom. The Harrison contract is as good as signed, he was saying, just waiting on their CEO to stop playing hard to get. Laughter rippled through the group. I checked my phone again, right on time. Ladies and gentlemen, a voice announced over the speakers, please welcome the CEO of Harrison Enterprises, Mr. James Harrison. The crowd parted as a distinguished man in his 60s made his way to the center of the room. Steve practically tripped over himself rushing to greet him. Mr. Harrison, such an honor. I was just telling everyone about our upcoming deal. Yes, about that, Harrison interrupted. There's been a change of plans. Steve's smile faltered. I don't understand. We've decided to go in a different direction. In fact, Harrison looked around the room. Is A.J. Carter here tonight? My moment had arrived. I squeezed Emma's arm and whispered, watch this. Actually, I said loudly, stepping forward, I am. The look on Steve's face was priceless. Alex, what are you doing? This is a private conversation. A.J. Harrison's face lit up. I didn't expect to see you here. Have you two met? Steve looked between us, confusion written all over his face. Mr. Harrison, this is my brother-in-law. He's nobody. Nobody? Harrison laughed. This man is the CEO of Carter Innovations, the company that just acquired Harrison Enterprises. The silence that fell over the room was deafening. Emma's champagne glass slipped from her fingers, shattering on the marble floor. That's impossible, Steve stammered. He can't even afford a suit. I pulled a folded document from my inside pocket. the contract Steve had been chasing for months. "Actually, this Brioni suit cost more than your car, and as for the deal you've been working on," I held up the contract. "I signed it this morning." From the other side of the table, Steve's face went from red to white to a sickly shade of green. You're the CEO they've been trying to set up a meeting with?" "For the past 3 months," I confirmed, "though I have to say, your emails calling me an arrogant tech bro who doesn't understand real business were particularly entertaining." Emma stepped forward, her eyes wide. "Alex, what's going on?" "Your brother," Harrison said proudly, "is one of the most successful tech entrepreneurs in the country. Carter Innovations is revolutionizing the industry. That's why we agreed to the acquisition." But you live in that tiny apartment," Emma protested. "You wear the same clothes all the time." "Because I choose to," I said simply. "Success isn't about showing off, Emma." Something Steve never understood. Steve seemed to find his voice again. "This is some kind of joke. You're nothing but a loser who can't afford a suit," I finished for him. "You might want to update that assessment, especially since I'm now effectively your boss's boss." The color drained from his face again as the implications sank in. "Oh, and Steve," I added, enjoying this more than I probably should, "about that promotion you were promised? We'll need to reevaluate that. I'm not sure someone with your attitude is right for a leadership position." As Steve sputtered and Emma stared, I turned to Harrison. "Shall we discuss the transition plans?" "Lead the way, A.J., Harrison said cheerfully, following me toward the private meeting rooms. Behind us, I could hear Steve's colleagues already starting to whisper. His carefully constructed image of success was crumbling, and he had no one to blame but himself. But the story of how we got here, that's even better than the look on his face when his world fell apart. 5 years earlier, I was fresh out of college when I started Carter Innovations in my garage. While Steve was climbing the corporate ladder and mocking my little computer hobby, I was developing the algorithm that would revolutionize data security. Emma tried to be supportive, in her way. "Maybe you could get a job at Steve's company," she'd suggest, "just until your project takes off." But I knew I was onto something big. My team consisted of 3 other developers who shared my vision. We worked around the clock, surviving on ramen and energy drinks, pouring everything we had into the code. Steve, of course, never missed an opportunity to belittle our efforts. "Playing with your computer friends again?" he'd sneer at family gatherings. "When are you going to grow up and get a real job?" I remember one Christmas dinner particularly well. Steve had just gotten a promotion, and he wouldn't shut up about it. "Corner office, company car, 6-figure salary," he boasted. "This is what success looks like, Alex. Not whatever you're doing in that garage." What he didn't know was that earlier that day, we'd secured our first major investor, $10 million in seed funding. I could have bought his company car with the money in my checking account. But I stayed quiet, let him think what he wanted. Success isn't about proving others wrong, it's about proving yourself right. The algorithm we developed caught the attention of major tech companies. Suddenly, Carter Innovations was the hot new startup everyone wanted a piece of. We moved from my garage to real offices, hired more developers, expanded our reach. Through it all, I maintained my modest lifestyle, lived in the same apartment, drove the same car, wore the same clothes. Money changes people. I'd seen it happen to Steve. I was determined not to let it change me. Emma and Steve got married 2 years into my company's rise. By then, Carter Innovations was worth 9 figures. But only a handful of people knew I was the CEO. I attended their wedding as the shabby brother-in-law who hadn't quite figured life out yet. Steve made sure to seat me at the back, away from his important business associates. "Can't have you embarrassing me," he said. "Some of these people could be crucial to my career." Little did he know that 3 of those crucial people had already signed multi-million-dollar contracts with my company. I let him have his moment, let him build his house of cards. Because sometimes, the best revenge isn't about knocking someone down, it's about letting them climb so high that the fall does all the work for you. Present day. The aftermath of the revelation at the corporate gala was exactly what you'd expect. Steve tried to damage control, claiming he'd known all along who I was, that it was all some elaborate joke between brothers-in-law. Nobody bought it. Emma cornered me in one of the private meeting rooms after my discussion with Harrison. "Why didn't you tell me?" she demanded, hurt evident in her voice. "Would you have believed me?" I asked quietly. "Or would you have taken Steve's side, like you always do?" She flinched. "That's not fair. Isn't it? How many times did you sit there while he insulted me? How many times did you suggest I get a real job, instead of defending my choices? I was worried about you," she protested. "Living in that tiny apartment, working all hours. I chose that apartment. Emma, I chose everything about my life. Success doesn't have to look like Steve's version of it." She was quiet for a moment, processing. How successful are you, exactly?" I pulled up my company's latest valuation on my phone and showed her. Her eyes went wide. That's billions." "Yes. And all this time, you let us think. I let you think what you wanted to think. You and Steve were so convinced you knew what success looked like that you never bothered to look closer." Emma sank into a chair, looking shell-shocked. "Steve's going to lose his mind when he processes all this." "Steve's going to lose more than his mind," I corrected. "The acquisition means every executive position is under review. His behavior tonight didn't exactly make a strong case for keeping him." "You wouldn't fire him?" "No. But demote him? Transfer him to a smaller office?" "Absolutely. Actions have consequences, Emma. It's time he learned that." "He's my husband," she said softly. "And I'm your brother. But that didn't stop either of you from treating me like a failure for 5 years." Before she could respond, there was a commotion outside. Steve's voice carried through the door, slurred and angry. "Where is he? Where's that little tech nerd who thinks he can ruin my life?" I sighed. "Sounds like your husband found the bar." Emma jumped up. "I should let security handle it," I said, already texting my head of security. "Like I said, actions have consequences." We watched through the window as 2 suited men quietly but firmly escorted a protesting Steve from the ballroom. His face was red, his tie askew, his carefully crafted image of corporate success thoroughly shattered. "What happens now?" Emma asked. Now I run my company." Steve adjusts to his new reality. "And you?" I turned to face her. "You decide whether you want to know your actual brother, or if you prefer the version of me you and Steve created in your heads." She had the grace to look ashamed. "I'd like to know my actual brother." "Good." I checked my watch. "Because he has a board meeting tomorrow morning, and a corporate merger to oversee. The real world of business waits for no one, not even humbled brothers-in-law." The next few weeks were interesting, to say the least. Steve was transferred to a smaller branch office, not quite a demotion, but definitely not the career trajectory he'd planned. His expense accounts were audited, his client list reviewed, his personnel file scrutinized. Every time he tried to protest, I simply pulled up the emails he'd sent mocking me over the years. Amazing how quickly family loyalty becomes important when the power dynamic shifts. Emma made efforts to rebuild our relationship. She asked about my work, really asked, not just made polite conversation. She visited my office, met my team, saw firsthand what I'd built while she and Steve were dismissing me as a failure. "I don't understand," she said one day, looking around my penthouse office. "Why didn't you ever say anything? Show us any of this?" "Because I didn't need to prove myself to anyone," I replied. "Success isn't about validation from others. It's about believing in yourself when no one else does." She nodded slowly. "Steve's struggling with everything." "I imagine he is. It's hard when your entire worldview gets turned upside down." "He wants to apologize." I laughed. "No, he wants his corner office back. There's a difference." "He's still family," she said quietly. "Family works both ways, Emma. He spent years tearing me down, trying to make himself feel bigger. Now he can spend some time building himself back up, the right way this time." 3 months after the gala, Steve finally swallowed his pride enough to request a meeting. He came to my office, looking uncomfortable in the waiting room where he once might have been the one keeping others waiting. "Your brother-in-law is here," my assistant announced, not bothering to hide her smirk. She'd heard enough of Steve's voicemails over the years to enjoy this moment. "Send him in." Steve entered like a man walking to his own execution. Gone was the arrogant swagger, the condescending smirk. Amazing what a few months of humility can do to a person. "Alex, I mean, Mr. Carter. Alex is fine. Steve, we are family. After all, when it's convenient for you. He winced. I deserve that. You deserve a lot more than that. Have a seat. He sat, fidgeting with his tie. The silence stretched between us. I'm sorry, he finally said. For what, specifically? For years of mockery? For treating me like a failure? For trying to convince my sister I was an embarrassment? Or just for finding out you were wrong? All of it, he mumbled. I was insecure. That made me laugh. Insecure? You had everything you thought defined success. The title, the office, the salary. What did you have to be insecure about? I knew I was just playing a part, following a script. You were actually building something, creating something. I didn't understand it, so I mocked it. I leaned back in my chair, studying him. And now? Now I understand what real success looks like. It's not about the corner office or the fancy car. It's about vision, creation, impact. He met my eyes. Everything I pretended to have, you actually built. Interesting perspective. Why should I believe it's genuine? Because I'm not asking for my old position back, he said quietly. I'm asking for a chance to learn, really learn, from the bottom if necessary. Now that was unexpected. The bottom, I repeated. You'd be willing to start over? Give up the executive perks? Work your way up based on merit rather than manipulation? He nodded. I want to understand what you built. Really understand it, not just wear the title. I considered this. Our entry-level coding program starts next month. 3 months of intensive training, followed by a junior developer position if you pass. Starting salary is 1/3 what you're making now. Steve swallowed hard but nodded again. I want to do it. Why? Because. He paused, seeming to choose his words carefully. Because I want to be the kind of success you are. Real success, not just the appearance of it. I pulled up the program application on my computer and turned the screen toward him. Fill it out, like everyone else. No special treatment. Thank you, Alex. Don't thank me yet. The program has a 70% washout rate, and your previous behavior means you'll be watched more closely than most. He stood, straightening his shoulders. I understand, and I really am sorry for everything. As he turned to leave, I called after him. Steve? He paused at the door. That suit doesn't fit you properly. If you're going to work here, learn to dress like you respect yourself, not like you're trying to impress others. A ghost of a smile crossed his face. Any recommendations for a tailor? Check your email. And Steve, welcome to the real world of success. Try not to let it go to your head this time. Epilogue. 1 year later. The annual corporate gala looks very different from the CEO's perspective. I watch from the sidelines as employees mingle, deals are discussed, connections are made. Emma appears at my elbow, radiant in a simple black dress. Quite a change from last year. Quite a change from every year. I agree. Across the room, Steve is explaining a coding concept to a group of new hires. He's wearing a perfectly tailored suit now, but his enthusiasm is focused on the technology, not his appearance. He survived the training program, barely, worked harder than he ever had in his life, learned what it means to earn respect rather than demand it. He's different, Emma says, following my gaze. Success does that to people, I reply. Real success, not the illusion of it. You never needed the illusion, she observes. No, I had something better. I had belief in myself. Steve catches us watching and raises his glass in acknowledgement. There's respect in his eyes now, not resentment, understanding, not envy. Think he finally gets it? Emma asks. I watch as Steve turns back to his group, pulling out his laptop to demonstrate a piece of code he's particularly proud of. His audience leans in, genuinely interested. Yeah, I smile. I think he finally does. Success isn't about the suit you wear or the office you occupy. It's about creating something meaningful, something that lasts. Sometimes it takes hitting rock bottom to learn that lesson. Steve learned it the hard way, but then again, those are usually the lessons that stick. As the evening winds down, I gather everyone for a toast. Steve stands near the back, no longer needing to be the center of attention. To real success, I say, raising my glass, and to those brave enough to redefine what that means. Steve's eyes meet mine across the room, and I see in them something I never expected, gratitude. Not for the job or the opportunity, but for the lesson. The understanding that true success isn't about proving others wrong, it's about proving yourself right. And sometimes, just sometimes, those two things happen to coincide perfectly at a corporate gala, when a brother-in-law's carefully constructed facade crumbles to reveal the foundation of something far more genuine. That's the thing about success, it doesn't need to announce itself. Real success whispers, while fake success shouts. Steve finally learned to listen for the whisper, and in the end, that might be the greatest success story of all.
I was sitting at my desk, surrounded by the usual chaos of a school counselor's office, piles of papers, sticky notes clinging to every surface, and the faint smell of coffee lingering in the air. My day had been the typical blend of teenage angst and administrative tasks when I noticed the envelope. It was plain, unmarked, and sitting atop the stack of college brochures like it had just appeared out of thin air. Curiosity got the better of me. I tore it open, expecting some mundane request or perhaps another reminder about the upcoming parent-teacher night. Instead, I found a typed letter, the words cold and clinical, yet somehow burning into my brain. Your husband, Grant Lawson, is not who you think he is. He's been unfaithful and involved in illegal activities at his restaurant. Be careful. I read it twice, 3 times, each word slicing deeper into the fabric of my reality. My name is Eliza, and at that moment I felt like I was standing on the edge of a cliff, the ground beneath me crumbling away. I shoved the letter into my bag, my hands trembling. The bell rang, signaling the end of the school day, and I mechanically went through the motions of seeing the last few students out. All the while, my mind was racing, trying to piece together the implications of what I had just read. Grant and I had been married for 8 years. He was charming, sure, with that easy smile and those ambitious plans for his restaurant. But lately, there had been late nights, vague explanations, and a growing distance between us that I had chalked up to the pressures of his business. Now I was questioning everything. The drive home was a blur. I parked in our driveway and just sat there, gripping the steering wheel like it was the only thing keeping me tethered to reality. The house was quiet, the kind of quiet that felt heavy, like it was waiting for something to happen. I finally got out of the car and walked inside, the letter still tucked away in my bag, a secret burning a hole through the fabric. I needed to talk to someone who could help me make sense of this mess. Ruby, my best friend, was the first person who came to mind. She had a knack for seeing through the bullshit and telling it like it was. I dialed her number, my heart pounding in my chest. Hey, Ruby. Can you come over? I need to talk. Sure thing, Eliza. What's up? You sound off. I'll tell you when you get here. Just please hurry. While I waited, I tried to distract myself by tidying up the living room, but every little thing seemed to remind me of Grant. The framed photo from our wedding, the souvenirs from our travels, even the stupid throw blanket he insisted we needed. It all felt like a lie now. Ruby arrived about 15 minutes later, her expression a mix of concern and curiosity. She took one look at me and knew something was seriously wrong. Okay, Spill. What's going on? I handed her the letter, watching her eyes scan the words. Her face shifted from confusion to anger, then to a kind of steely determination that I had always admired about her. Eliza, this is serious. What are you going to do? I don't know, Ruby. I feel like my whole life is a lie. I need to find out if this is true, but I don't even know where to start. First things first, you can't confront Grant until you have proof. If there's one thing I've learned from all those crime shows, it's that you need evidence. Her attempt at humor made me smile, albeit weakly. Yeah, I suppose you're right. Listen, Eliza, whatever happens, I'm here for you. We'll figure this out together. Her words were a lifeline, a reminder that I wasn't alone in this. But as much as I appreciated her support, I knew that the path ahead was one I had to walk myself. I had to dig deeper, find the truth, and decide what to do with it. As Ruby left, my mind was already racing with possibilities. Who sent the letter? Why now? And most importantly, how much of it was true? I didn't have the answers yet, but I was determined to find them. The evening stretched on, each tick of the clock a reminder of the confrontation that loomed ahead. I knew I couldn't ignore this, couldn't pretend everything was fine. Not anymore. I lay in bed that night, staring at the ceiling, the letter's words echoing in my mind. I knew this was just the beginning, that the truth was out there waiting to be uncovered. And I was going to find it, no matter what it took. The next morning, I woke up with a sense of dread hanging over me like a storm cloud. Grant was already gone, his side of the bed cold and untouched, a silent reminder of the growing distance between us. I went through the motions of getting ready, but my mind was elsewhere, tangled up in the implications of that letter. At breakfast, I noticed the little things that had become routine: the empty coffee cup he left on the counter, the way he never seemed to be around for breakfast anymore. I tried to shake off the feeling, focusing instead on the day ahead. But the truth was, the letter had planted a seed of doubt that was quickly taking root. When I got to work, I found it hard to concentrate. My students' problems felt trivial compared to the chaos brewing in my own life. During lunch, I called Mabel, Grant's mother. I needed her wisdom, her quiet strength. She answered on the second ring, her voice warm and welcoming. "Eliza, dear, how are you?" "I'm managing," I replied, trying to keep my voice steady. "Can we talk? I could really use your advice." "Of course, come by after work. I'll make us some tea." The rest of the day dragged on, each minute a reminder of the conversation I was dreading with Grant. By the time I arrived at Mabel's, I was a bundle of nerves. She greeted me with a hug, her presence instantly calming. As we sat in her cozy kitchen, the smell of chamomile filling the air, I felt a bit of the tension ease. Mabel had that effect on people. "I've noticed Grant's been distant," I began, choosing my words carefully. "And I got this letter. Says he's been unfaithful and involved in some shady business. I don't know what to believe." Mabel's eyes softened with understanding. "Eliza, I've seen this before. Grant's father was much the same, charming, ambitious, but always hiding something. Trust your instincts." Her words were both comforting and unsettling. I had always admired Mabel's ability to see through the facade, but hearing her confirm my fears was like a punch to the gut. "Do you think it's true?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. "I don't know, dear. But I do know that secrets have a way of coming out. You need to be prepared for whatever you find." Her advice echoed in my mind as I drove home. The house was empty, Grant still at the restaurant, or so he said. I sat on the couch, my thoughts a tangled mess, when Ruby called. "Hey, how are you holding up?" she asked, her voice a lifeline. "I'm okay, I think. I talked to Mabel. She told me to trust my instincts." "Smart woman. So, what's your next move?" "I need to confront him, but I want to be sure first. I need proof." "Then let's get you some. I know a guy, Sam Brooks, a private investigator. He's discreet and good at what he does." I hesitated, the idea of spying on Grant feeling both necessary and invasive. But the need for answers outweighed my reservations. "Okay, let's do it." The decision felt like a weight lifted off my shoulders, a step toward clarity in the fog of uncertainty. That evening, when Grant finally came home, I watched him closely, searching for signs of guilt in his easy smile and charming demeanor. "How was your day?" he asked, casually, as if everything was perfectly normal. "Busy, you know how it is," I replied, keeping my tone light, pretending I didn't notice the way he avoided eye contact. As we sat down for dinner, the silence between us was deafening. I wanted to scream, to demand answers, but instead I played along, letting the charade continue for just a little longer. Later, as I lay in bed, Grant asleep beside me, I couldn't help but wonder how well I truly knew the man I had married. Thought was both terrifying and liberating, pushing me further down this path of discovery. The next few days passed in a blur of routine and subterfuge. I met with Sam, who promised to dig into Grant's affairs discreetly. Each day, I juggled the demands of my job with the growing tension at home, the uncertainty gnawing at me like a persistent itch. And then, just when I thought I was beginning to understand the scope of my situation, Mabel called with a revelation that sent my mind spinning. Eliza, there's something you should know. Grant's father, he had another family. I didn't find out until it was too late. I'm telling you this because I see the same patterns in Grant. Her words were a bombshell, adding a new layer of complexity to an already tangled web. Seemed the past was repeating itself, and I was caught in the middle, struggling to break free. As I hung up the phone, I realized that the foundation of my life was more fractured than I had ever imagined. But with each new revelation, my resolve hardened. I was determined to uncover the truth, no matter the cost. The air felt heavy as I drove to meet Sam Brooks. Private investigator had called earlier, his voice as steady and assured as ever, telling me he had some information. My stomach churned with a mix of dread and anticipation. I had asked for the truth, and now it was time to face it. I met Sam at a small, unassuming cafe on the edge of town. He was already seated at a corner table, a folder in front of him and a cup of black coffee in hand. He nodded as I approached, gesturing for me to sit. "Eliza," he greeted, his tone professional yet kind. "I've got some updates for you." I nodded, trying to keep my nerves in check. "Okay, let's hear it." Sam opened the folder, revealing a series of photographs and documents. "I follow Grant for the past week. He's been meeting with several individuals who have questionable backgrounds. It seems his restaurant is a front for some illegal dealings." My heart sank as I looked at the evidence. There was no denying it now. The man I thought I knew was involved in something dark and dangerous. "And the affairs?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. Sam hesitated, then handed me a photo. It showed Grant with a woman I didn't recognize, their body language intimate and familiar. "I'm sorry, Eliza. This isn't easy to see." I felt a cold numbness spread through me, a mix of betrayal and anger. I had suspected, but seeing it confirmed was a different kind of pain. "What do I do now?" I asked, more to myself than to Sam. "That's up to you. But whatever you decide, you should be prepared. People like Grant don't always react well when cornered." I nodded, my mind racing. I needed to confront Grant, but I also needed to protect myself. And there was the matter of Mabel's revelation about Grant's father. It was all too much, yet I couldn't ignore it. As I left the cafe, the weight of the truth settled on my shoulders. I drove home, the photographs and documents burning a hole in my bag, a constant reminder of the storm brewing in my life. When I got home, Grant was there, sitting on the couch, his expression unreadable. Tension in the room was palpable as I walked in, my resolve hardening with each step. "Eliza, we need to talk," he said, his voice calm but with an edge of something I couldn't quite place. "Yeah, we do," I replied, setting my bag down with a deliberate thud. He looked at me, his eyes searching mine for a clue to my thoughts. "I've been meaning to tell you about some changes at the restaurant," he began, his words careful and measured. "Changes? Is that what you call it?" I shot back, unable to keep the bitterness from my voice. He flinched, a crack in his calm facade. "What do you mean?" I took a deep breath, pulling out the photos and documents, laying them on the table between us. "I know Grant. I know about the affairs, the illegal activities. Everything." His face paled, his eyes darting to the evidence, then back to me. "Eliza, I can explain." "Explain? You've been lying to me, to everyone. How can you possibly explain this?" His charm faltered, replaced by a desperation I hadn't seen before. "I was trying to fix things, to make something of myself. It just got out of hand." "Out of hand?" I repeated, incredulous. "You've put us all at risk, Grant. This isn't just about you anymore." He stood, running a hand through his hair, his frustration evident. "I didn't want to drag you into this. I thought I could handle it." "Well, you were wrong," I said, my voice steady despite the turmoil inside me. "And now we have to deal with the consequences." The room fell silent, the weight of our unspoken fears hanging between us. I felt a mix of anger and sadness, the betrayal cutting deeper than I had imagined. Suddenly, the doorbell rang, breaking the tension. I opened it to find Ruby standing there, her expression a mix of concern and determination. "Hey, I thought you might need some backup," she said, stepping inside without waiting for an invitation. Her presence was a balm, a reminder that I wasn't alone in this fight. Grant looked between us, realizing that the facade he had carefully constructed was crumbling, and there was no going back. As the evening wore on, the reality of the situation settled in. I knew the path ahead was fraught with challenges, but I also knew I had the strength to face them. This was about more than just uncovering the truth. It was about reclaiming my life, my sense of justice. And as I stood there, surrounded by the remnants of my shattered reality, I felt a flicker of hope. This was just the beginning, and I was ready to see it through to the end. The days following my confrontation with Grant felt like I was living in a haze. Each morning, I woke up hoping it had all been a nightmare, only to find the evidence staring back at me from its hiding place in my closet. I could feel the weight of it pressing down on me, urging me to make a decision. One afternoon, as I sat in my office at the school, my phone buzzed with a message from Mabel. "Can we talk?" "It's important," it read. Her words sent a jolt of anxiety through me. I quickly replied, arranging to meet her at her house after work. When I arrived, Mabel was waiting for me on the porch, her expression serious yet welcoming. She led me inside, and we settled into the living room, the familiar comfort of her home providing a small respite from the chaos of my thoughts. "Eliza, I've been thinking about everything," she began, her voice gentle yet firm. "There's something else I need to tell you." I braced myself, knowing that whatever she was about to reveal could change everything once again. "Grant's father wasn't just deceitful with his affairs," Mabel continued, her eyes filled with a mix of regret and resolve. "He was involved in some very dangerous circles. I didn't know until it was too late, and I fear Grant may have followed in his footsteps more closely than I realized." Her words hit me like a tidal wave, the implications crashing over me. The web of lies and deceit was far deeper than I had imagined, and it seemed Grant was entangled in it more than I could have known. "Why didn't you tell me this before?" I asked, trying to keep the accusation out of my voice. "I hoped it wasn't true," Mabel admitted, her eyes downcast. "But seeing how things have unfolded, I can't ignore it any longer. I'm telling you now because I don't want you to make the same mistakes I did." Her confession was both a warning and a plea, urging me to take action before it was too late. I nodded, my mind racing with the possibilities. I needed to protect myself and my future, but how could I do that when the ground beneath me kept shifting? As I left Mabel's house, my phone buzzed again, this time with a call from Ruby. "Hey, I've got something you need to see," she said, her voice tinged with urgency. "Meet me at the park." I agreed, curiosity and apprehension battling within me. When I arrived, Ruby was already there, pacing near the swings, her camera bag slung over her shoulder. "What's going on?" I asked, joining her. She handed me her camera, showing me a series of photos she had taken over the past few days. They showed Grant meeting with a group of men outside his restaurant, their expressions serious and their gestures animated. "I've been keeping an eye on him," Ruby explained, her voice low. "These guys aren't your typical business partners. Something's definitely up." I studied the photos, the pieces of the puzzle clicking into place. It was clear that whatever Grant was involved in, it was bigger than I had anticipated. "Thank you, Ruby," I said, feeling a surge of gratitude for her loyalty and determination. "I don't know what I'd do without you." "We're in this together, Eliza," she replied, her eyes fierce with determination. "Now, what's the plan?" Paused, considering my options. I needed to confront Grant again, but this time with a clearer understanding of the stakes. And I needed to make sure I was protected both physically and legally. As I sat in the park watching the children play, I felt a shift within me. This wasn't just about uncovering the truth anymore. It was about reclaiming my life and ensuring a safe future for myself and the child I might one day have. The thought brought a sense of clarity, a determination to see this through to the end. That evening, I returned home to find Grant waiting for me, his expression guarded. Tension between us crackled like static electricity, unspoken words hanging heavy in the air. "We need to talk," I said, my voice steady despite the turmoil inside me. "About what?" he replied, his tone defensive. "About the men you've been meeting," I said, watching his reaction closely. His eyes flickered with something I couldn't quite place. Fear, perhaps, or maybe realization that his secrets were unraveling. "Eliza, it's not what you think," he began, but I cut him off. "Then tell me what it is, Grant. Because from where I'm standing, it looks like you're in way over your head." He hesitated, the silence stretching between us before finally speaking. "I was trying to help the business, to make it successful. But things got complicated." "Complicated?" echoed, incredulous. "Grant, you're putting us all at risk. This isn't just about you anymore." Power dynamics between us had shifted, and for the first time I saw a glimpse of vulnerability in his eyes. It was a small victory, but it fueled my resolve to keep pushing forward, to uncover the full extent of his deceit and protect the life I was fighting to reclaim. The days blurred together as I navigated the chaos Grant had brought into our lives. My mind was a whirlwind of plans and fears, each day a new test of my resolve. Mabel and I had begun documenting everything, a paper trail of deceit and betrayal that we hoped would protect us. But with each passing day, the stakes seemed to rise, the shadows of Grant's actions growing longer and more menacing. One evening, as I sat at the kitchen table, sorting through the documents Mabel and I had gathered, Grant walked in. His presence filled the room, an unspoken tension crackling between us. I could feel his gaze on me, the weight of his scrutiny heavy on my shoulders. "Eliza, we need to talk," he said, his voice a mix of frustration and something else, something darker. I looked up, meeting his eyes with a steady gaze. "About what, Grant? The lies or the danger you've put us in?" He flinched, a flicker of something like guilt crossing his features. "I'm trying to fix it, you know. I'm doing everything I can." "Are you?" I challenged, standing up and facing him. "Because from where I'm sitting, it looks like you're digging us deeper." Grant's jaw tightened, a muscle ticking in his cheek. "You don't understand, Eliza. It's not that simple." "Then make me understand," I replied, my voice rising. "Because all I see are secrets and lies." The silence stretched between us, thick and suffocating. I could see the conflict in his eyes, the war between his ambition and the reality he had created. It was a moment of vulnerability, but it was fleeting, quickly replaced by the defensive mask he wore so well. "I'm handling it," he insisted, his tone firm, but I could hear the cracks forming beneath it. Before I could respond, the doorbell rang, slicing through the tension like a knife. I moved to answer it, finding Ruby on the other side, her expression urgent. "Eliza, we need to talk," she said, glancing past me to where Grant stood. "Now?" I nodded, stepping outside with her, the cool evening air a welcome relief from the suffocating tension inside. "What's going on?" I asked, my heart pounding. "I've been digging deeper," Ruby said, her voice low and serious. "And I found something big. Grant's business isn't just a front, it's tied to a network of money laundering. This is serious, Eliza." Her words hit me like a punch to the gut, the implications spinning through my mind. This was bigger than I had imagined, the danger more immediate and real. "What do I do?" I asked, my voice trembling slightly. "We need to act fast," Ruby replied, her determination unwavering. "You have to get out of there, Eliza." "It's not safe." I nodded, the decision crystallizing in my mind. I couldn't stay, not with the threat looming over us. But leaving meant accepting the end of everything I had built with Grant, the life we had shared unraveling like a frayed thread. As I re-entered the house, the gravity of the situation settled over me like a shroud. Grant was still in the kitchen, his back to me as he stared out the window. "I'm leaving," I said, my voice steady despite the fear clawing at my insides. He turned, surprise and disbelief etched on his face. "What? You can't just—" "I can and I will," I interrupted, my resolve firm. "I have to protect myself, Grant. I have to protect our future." His expression shifted, a mix of anger and desperation. "Eliza, please. I can fix this." "No, you can't," I replied, my heart aching with the truth of it. "You've made your choices, and now I have to make mine." The silence that followed was heavy, the finality of my words hanging in the air. I turned away, moving to gather my things, each step a reminder of the life I was leaving behind. As I packed a bag, my mind raced with the possibilities, the uncertainty of the future looming large. But beneath the fear and doubt, there was a flicker of hope, a belief that I could rebuild, that I could find a way forward. With one last look at the home we had shared, I stepped out into the night, the path ahead uncertain but necessary. This was about more than revenge or justice. It was about reclaiming my life, my sense of self, and forging a new path in the face of betrayal. As I drove away, the weight of the past slowly lifted, replaced by a newfound determination. I didn't know what the future held, but I knew I had the strength to face it, to rise above the chaos and carve out a new beginning. I stood in the dimly lit hallway of Mabel's house, the weight of my decision pressing down on me. I had left Grant and everything that tied me to him, but the sense of relief I'd hoped for hadn't come. Instead, I felt adrift, the future an uncertain blur. Mabel sat across from me, her presence a comforting constant in the chaos. "You did the right thing, Eliza," she said softly, her voice a balm to my frayed nerves. "I know," I replied, trying to believe it, but doubt lingered like a shadow. "It's just, what now?" "We keep moving forward," Mabel said, her resolve unwavering. "We protect what's left and rebuild." Her words were reassuring, but the path ahead seemed impossibly daunting. As if sensing my hesitation, Mabel reached for my hand, her grip firm and grounding. Before I could respond, my phone buzzed with a message from Sam Brooks. "Need to see you. Urgent." The words sent a shiver of apprehension through me. I nodded to Mabel and left to meet him, my mind racing with possibilities. Sam was waiting at the cafe, his expression serious. "Eliza, I've uncovered more about Grant's dealings," he said without preamble. "It's worse than we thought. He's deeper into this network than anyone realized." The news hit me like a physical blow, the implications spiraling through my mind. "What does that mean?" I asked, my voice barely steady. "It means you're in more danger than we anticipated. These people don't take kindly to loose ends," Sam explained, his tone grave. I felt the room spin, the walls closing in. The life I'd known was slipping away, replaced by a nightmare I couldn't wake from. "What do I do?" I asked, desperation creeping into my voice. "You need to lie low, stay out of sight until things settle," Sam advised. "And be prepared for anything." I nodded, the reality of my situation settling over me like a shroud. I was in over my head, and the way out seemed impossibly far. As I left the cafe, Ruby called, her voice a lifeline in the storm. "Eliza, I've got a place you can stay. It's safe and no one will find you there." "Thank you, Ruby," I said, my gratitude genuine. "I'll head there now." The drive to the safe house was a blur, my mind replaying Sam's warning over and over. I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched, that danger lurked around every corner. By the time I arrived, my nerves were frayed, exhaustion tugging at my edges. The safe house was small and unassuming, tucked away in a quiet neighborhood. Ruby had left the key under the mat, and as I stepped inside, the silence enveloped me. It was a stark contrast to the chaos of my recent days, but the solitude was a balm I desperately needed. As I settled in, I felt the weight of everything pressing down on me. The lies, the danger, the uncertainty of the future. It was all too much. I sank onto the couch, my body trembling with the effort of holding it together. The night stretched on, each tick of the clock a reminder of the precariousness of my situation. I was alone, isolated from the life I had known, and the uncertainty of what lay ahead was suffocating. Then, just as I thought I had reached my breaking point, the phone rang. It was Grant, his voice a mix of anger and desperation. "Eliza, you need to come back. We can fix this." I felt a surge of anger, the audacity of his words igniting something within me. "Fix this? You've put us all in danger, Grant. There's no fixing that. You don't understand, he insisted, his voice rising. I can make it right. No, you can't, I replied, my voice firm. I'm done, Grant. I'm done with the lies and the danger. The silence on the line was heavy, the finality of my words hanging between us. I hung up, the decision solidifying within me. I couldn't go back, not now. But even as I resolved to move forward, a new fear took root. If Grant couldn't fix this, what would happen next? The uncertainty was a constant companion, whispering fears I couldn't ignore. As the night deepened, I felt the weight of my choices, the path ahead fraught with danger and doubt. But beneath it all, there was a flicker of hope, a belief that I could rise above the chaos, that I could reclaim my life. In the quiet of the safe house, I realized that this was my lowest point, but it was also a turning point. I could let the darkness consume me, or I could fight my way back into the light. And as I lay there, the decision was clear. I would fight. For myself, for my future, and for the life I was determined to rebuild. The safe house was quiet, the only sound the soft ticking of a clock echoing through the dimly lit rooms. I sat at the small kitchen table, the weight of the impending confrontation pressing down on me like a physical force. I knew it was time to face Grant one last time, to put an end to the tangled web of lies and deceit that had ensnared us both. The phone rang, its shrill tones slicing through the silence. I picked it up, my heart pounding in my chest. It was Grant, his voice taut with desperation. Eliza, we need to talk. Face to face. Why? I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. So you can spin more lies? No, he replied, a hint of vulnerability in his tone. I need to explain. Meet me at the restaurant. Please. I hesitated, the thought of seeing him again filling me with a mix of dread and resolve. But I knew I had to do this, to confront him with everything I had learned. Fine, I said, my voice firm. But this is it, Grant. No more games. The drive to the restaurant was tense, my mind a whirlwind of possibilities. I parked a block away, the evening air cool against my skin as I approached the building. The restaurant loomed ahead, its lights casting long shadows on the sidewalk. Inside, the place was empty, the chairs stacked on tables, the air thick with the smell of cleaning products. Grant stood near the bar, his posture tense, eyes shadowed with something I couldn't quite read. Eliza, he said, his voice a mix of relief and apprehension. Thank you for coming. Get to the point, Grant, I replied, crossing my arms to keep from trembling. I'm tired of your half-truths. He nodded, a flicker of something like regret crossing his features. I messed up, Eliza. I got in over my head. But it was never supposed to be like this. Like what? I challenged, stepping closer. A front for illegal activities? A lie. I thought I could control it, he admitted, his voice cracking. I wanted to give us everything, but I lost sight of what mattered. His words hung in the air, a confession that was both too late and too little. I felt a surge of anger, the betrayal cutting deeper than I'd expected. And the affairs? I asked, my voice cold. Were they part of your plan too? Grant flinched, his eyes dropping to the floor. I was stupid. I thought I needed more, but it was never real. I shook my head, disbelief mingling with frustration. You risked everything for nothing, Grant. You put us all in danger. I know, he said, his voice barely above a whisper. But I can fix it. I just need time. Time, echoed incredulous. You've had time and look where we are. The silence stretched between us, the weight of our choices a chasm neither of us could cross. I could see the desperation in his eyes, the fear of losing everything he'd built, but it was too late for that now. As I turned to leave, something caught my eye, a folder on the bar, its contents spilling out. I picked it up, flipping through the pages, my heart sinking as I realized what it was. Evidence, meticulously documented, of Grant's dealings and the network he was entangled in. What is this? I demanded, holding up the folder. It's everything, Grant replied, his voice resigned. I was going to turn it over to make things right. I studied him, searching for the truth in his eyes. For the first time, I saw the man he used to be, the one I had fallen in love with, buried beneath layers of ambition and insecurity. "Why now?" I asked, my voice softer, the anger giving way to a weary sadness. "Because I'm tired, Eliza," he said, his shoulders slumping. "Tired of running, of hiding. I want to end this." His confession was unexpected, a twist I hadn't anticipated. I felt a flicker of hope, tempered by the reality of our situation. "Then do it," I said, handing him the folder. "Turn it over and maybe we can find a way out of this mess." Grant nodded, taking the folder with a determined expression. "I will. I promise." As I left the restaurant, the weight of the confrontation lifted slightly, replaced by a cautious optimism. The resolution wasn't perfect, but it was a start, a step towards reclaiming the life we had lost. The themes of justice and redemption had brought us to this point, and as I walked into the night, I realized that the path ahead was still uncertain. But it was one I was ready to face. Confrontation had tested us both, but it had also offered a chance for healing, a chance to rebuild from the ashes of our mistakes. The morning sun filtered through the curtains of Mabel's living room, casting soft patterns across the floor. I sat with her, a cup of tea warming my hands, the air between us filled with a quiet sense of relief. It had been a few weeks since the confrontation with Grant, and though the path ahead was still uncertain, there was a newfound peace in knowing the worst was behind us. Mabel looked at me, her eyes filled with a mix of pride and understanding. "You've come a long way, Eliza," she said softly, her words carrying the weight of our shared journey. "I couldn't have done it without you," I replied, meaning every word. Her support had been a lifeline, guiding me through the storm. We sat in comfortable silence, the bond between us stronger than ever. It was a testament to the resilience of the human spirit, the ability to find strength in the face of adversity. As I sipped my tea, my thoughts drifted to Grant. He had turned over the evidence, and the authorities were now untangling the web he had woven. It was a step towards redemption, a chance for him to make amends, even if it meant facing the consequences of his actions. A knock at the door broke the quiet, and Ruby entered, her presence a burst of energy and warmth. "I brought something for you," she said, handing me a small, wrapped package. I opened it to find a photo album, the pages filled with memories of happier times. It was a reminder of the life I had built, the moments of joy and love that were still worth cherishing. "Thank you, Ruby," I said, touched by her gesture. "This means a lot." "We've been through a lot, but I know you'll come out stronger," she replied, her confidence in me unwavering. As the day unfolded, I felt a sense of closure settling over me. The journey had been tumultuous, but it had also been transformative. I had faced my fears, confronted the truth, and emerged with a clearer sense of who I was and what I wanted. Later, as the afternoon sun dipped below the horizon, I found myself alone in the garden, the cool breeze a gentle reminder of the world's beauty. I placed a hand on my stomach, feeling a flutter of movement, a reminder of the life growing within me. In that moment, I realized that this was the beginning of a new chapter. The themes of justice and protection had guided me through the darkness, and now they would light the way forward. I was no longer defined by the chaos of the past, but by the hope of the future. As I stood there, a lingering question tugged at the edges of my mind. Would Grant truly change? Could he find redemption in the choices he had made? It was a question that would remain unanswered, a reminder that life's complexities often defy simple resolutions. But I knew that whatever happened, I had the strength to face it. I had learned to trust myself, to find courage in vulnerability, and to embrace the unknown with open arms. The journey had tested me in ways I never expected, but it had also revealed a resilience I hadn't known I possessed. And as I looked out at the world, I felt a deep sense of peace, a certainty that I was exactly where I needed to be. With a final glance at the setting sun, I turned and walked back inside, ready to embrace whatever came next. Past was behind me, and the future was a canvas waiting to be painted with the colors of hope and possibility.
I never expected a charity gala to change my life, but that's exactly what happened on the night my fiancé's father collapsed. I was in the middle of analyzing gene sequences at my lab when Jasper's call came through. "Marley, you need to come to St. Michael's Hospital right now." His voice cracked. He just went down during his speech. They're saying it might be his heart. I'm Marley Finch, and until that moment, my biggest concern had been finishing my research paper on genetic markers before the deadline. Now, as I rushed through the hospital's automatic doors 20 minutes later, that seemed laughably unimportant. The emergency room waiting area was a scene of controlled chaos. Jasper's mother, Lorraine, paced in her designer gown, her perfectly manicured fingers clutching her phone. She barely acknowledged my presence with a slight nod. Typical. Jasper stood when he saw me, his bow tie hanging loose around his neck. "They're running tests," he said, pulling me into a tight hug. "God, Marley, One minute he was thanking everyone for supporting the foundation, and the next, "He's in good hands," I assured him, though my stomach churned at the sight of his pale face. I'd never seen Jasper this shaken before. A doctor emerged from the treatment area, her expression grave. "Mrs. Caldwell, your husband's condition is critical. His kidneys are failing, and we've detected severe damage to his liver." Lorraine's hand flew to her throat. "But how? Reggie's always been healthy. We're still running tests, but right now our primary concern is finding a compatible donor. Given the urgency, family members would be our best option." "I'll do it," Jasper said immediately. "Whatever he needs." The doctor nodded. "We'll need to run compatibility tests. If you'll come with me." As Jasper followed the doctor, Lorraine finally turned her full attention to me. "This is a family matter," she said, her voice low and clipped. "Perhaps you should head home." Before I could respond, my phone buzzed. It was my mom, Evelyn. "Everything okay, honey? You left the apartment in such a rush." "Reggie Caldwell's in the hospital," I said, moving away from Lorraine. "It's pretty serious." There was a long pause. "Oh, just that one syllable." But something in my mother's voice made me frown. "Do they know what's wrong?" "Organ failure. They're testing Jasper now for compatibility." Another pause. "Marley, maybe you should." "Dr. Anderson to emergency stat." The overhead announcement cut through our conversation. I watched as medical staff rushed toward the treatment area. "Mom, I have to go. I'll call you later." I hung up just as Jasper returned, looking confused. "They're saying something's weird with my blood work. They need to run more tests." My research brain kicked in. "What kind of weird?" "I don't know. Something about blood types not matching up right." He ran his hands through his hair. "I can barely think straight." As a geneticist, that detail snagged my attention. Blood types follow clear inheritance patterns. It's basic genetics. But before I could ask more questions, alarms started blaring from Reggie's room. The next few hours passed in a blur of medical terms and worried conversations. By morning, Reggie was stable but critical. Jasper had fallen asleep in an uncomfortable chair, and Lorraine had retreated to make phone calls. I sat there, watching the sunrise through the window, when Felicity, Jasper's aunt, arrived. She took one look at the scene and went pale. "How bad?" she whispered. "He needs a transplant," I said. "They're having trouble finding a match." Felicity's eyes darted to Jasper's sleeping form, then back to me. "No match yet." Something about her tone made me look at her more closely. She wouldn't meet my eyes. "Is there something I should know?" I asked quietly. She straightened her shoulders. "No, of course not. I should go check on my sister." But as she walked away, I couldn't shake the feeling that I'd just witnessed the tip of something much bigger. Between my mother's odd reaction, Jasper's blood work issues, and now Felicity's strange behavior, my scientific mind was starting to piece together a puzzle I wasn't sure I wanted to solve. After 36 hours at the hospital, Jasper finally agreed to come home and rest. The drive back to our apartment was silent, heavy with unspoken worries. I kept thinking about those blood test results, but every time I opened my mouth to ask about them, I saw the exhaustion in Jasper's face and stopped myself. Our apartment felt different somehow. The engagement photos on the walls seemed to mock us with their carefree smiles. Jasper headed straight for the shower while I called my mom. "I'm coming over," she said before I could protest. "You both need a proper meal, and I've got leftover lasagna." 20 minutes later, my mother arrived with enough food to feed an army. She took one look at Jasper, freshly showered but still looking lost, and went into full nurse mode. "Sit," she commanded. "When was the last time you ate something that wasn't from a vending machine?" Jasper managed a weak smile. "I honestly can't remember, Evelyn." As my mother busied herself in the kitchen, I noticed how her hands shook slightly while handling the dishes. Something was off. Mom was usually rock solid in a crisis. It's what made her such a great nurse. "The doctors say Dad's stable for now," Jasper said, picking at his food. "But without a compatible donor." My mother dropped a fork. The clatter made us both jump. "Sorry," she muttered, but her face had gone pale. "Just tired. Long shift yesterday." Before I could question her reaction, Jasper's phone rang. It was Lorraine. "Yes, Mother," he said, his voice tightening. "No, I don't think. Yes, I understand, but..." He pinched the bridge of his nose. "Fine. We'll be there in an hour." "What's wrong?" I asked after he hung up. "Mother's organizing a family meeting at their house. Says we need to discuss arrangements while Dad's incapacitated." He looked at me apologetically. "She wants you there too." The Caldwell mansion always made me feel small, but today it felt suffocating. Lorraine had gathered the family in the formal living room, all crystal chandeliers and antique furniture that nobody actually sat on. Felicity was already there, perched on the edge of a Victorian settee like she might bolt at any moment. She barely met my eyes when we walked in. "Jasper, darling." Lorraine swooped in, air-kissing his cheeks. "And Marley." Her pause before my name spoke volumes. I heard voices from the study, Lorraine's lawyer, apparently, discussing power of attorney. I excused myself to use the bathroom, but paused in the hallway when I heard my name. "That girl is becoming a problem," Lorraine was saying. "A scientist? From that background?" "Really, Felicity, you know what Reggie would want for Jasper." "Lorraine, now isn't the time." "It's exactly the time. With Reggie incapacitated, we need to protect the family's interests. That includes making sure Jasper doesn't make any unfortunate decisions." My hands clenched into fists. I dealt with Lorraine's thinly veiled contempt for years, but this was different. This felt calculated. "There you are." Jasper's voice made me jump. He frowned at my expression. "Everything okay?" Before I could answer, my phone buzzed. A text from the hospital lab. I'd called in a favor from a colleague to look at Jasper's blood work. "Results don't make sense," the text read. "Patient's blood type impossible given listed parents. Might want to double-check family history." My stomach dropped. I looked at Jasper, at his familiar features that I'd always thought came from Reggie. But now, "Marley." Jasper touched my arm. "You look like you've seen a ghost." "Just tired," I lied, pocketing my phone. "Maybe we should go home." "Not yet." Lorraine appeared in the hallway. "The lawyer needs to discuss the foundation's succession plans." "Jasper, come with me." "Marley, perhaps you'd be more comfortable waiting out here." As they disappeared into the study, I caught Felicity watching me. The guilt in her eyes told me everything I needed to know. Something was very wrong with the Caldwell family tree, and I was beginning to suspect it had roots in my own past. The scientist in me needed answers, but the woman who loved Jasper was terrified of what those answers might reveal. The lab results haunted me for days. I couldn't sleep, couldn't focus at work, and definitely couldn't look Jasper in the eye without feeling like I was betraying him somehow. Finally, I called Tess and asked her to meet me at our usual coffee spot. "You look like hell," she said, sliding into the booth across from me. I pushed my laptop toward her. "Look at these blood type results. Tell me I'm not crazy." Tess, a medical researcher herself, studied the screen. Her eyebrows shot up. "This can't be right. If these are Jasper's results, and Reggie's his father." She trailed off, frowning. "Exactly. It's genetically impossible." "Holy shit." Tess leaned back. "Does Jasper know? How am I supposed to tell him?" "Hey honey, by the way, the man you're trying to save might not actually be your father." The barista brought our drinks, and I noticed my hands shaking as I reached for my cup. "There's more," I said quietly. "My mom's been acting weird ever since Reggie collapsed. And yesterday I found this." I pulled out an old photograph I discovered while searching through Mom's storage boxes. It showed a much younger version of her at what looked like a company party. She was standing next to Reggie Caldwell, and they were looking at each other in a way that made my stomach turn. "No way," Tess whispered. My phone buzzed. Another text from Lorraine about wedding planning. She'd been oddly insistent about moving up the date, claiming we should do it while Reggie was still well enough to attend. She knows something, I said. Lorraine's been pushing hard to either break us up or rush us to the altar. Why? Maybe she's worried you'll figure it out. Tess took another look at the photo. When was this taken? 30 years ago. Mom was working as a nurse at Reggie's first store location. Just then my phone rang. It was Jasper. You need to come to the hospital, he said, his voice tight. Mother's trying to convince Dad to change his will while he's on medication. It's getting ugly. I arrived to find Lorraine and Felicity in a heated argument outside Reggie's room. Jasper stood between them, looking lost. He's not thinking clearly, Lorraine was saying. The medication is keeping him alive, Felicity shot back. You can't use that as an excuse too. They fell silent when they saw me. Lorraine's eyes narrowed. Family matters, she said pointedly. I am family, I replied, surprising myself with my steadiness. Or I will be soon. Will you? Lorraine's smile was razor sharp. Are you sure about that? Mother, Jasper warned, but I was already moving past them into Reggie's room. He looked worse than before, pale against the hospital sheets. His eyes opened when I approached. Marley, he said weakly. I need to tell you. Not now, darling. Lorraine interrupted, suddenly beside me. You need your rest. But Reggie grabbed my hand, his grip surprisingly strong. Your mother, he started. That's enough. Lorraine's voice cracked like a whip. Felicity stepped forward. Lorraine, maybe it's time. Get out. Lorraine pointed at the door. All of you out. As we filed into the hallway, I caught Felicity's arm. What was he trying to tell me about my mother? She pulled away, but not before I saw tears in her eyes. Ask Evelyn about the summer of '93, she whispered. Ask her about the company picnic. Back in the hallway, Jasper was staring at his phone. The lab sent over more test results, he said. They're saying. He looked up at me, confusion clouding his features. They're saying I can't be a donor because there's no genetic match. How is that possible? Behind him, I saw Lorraine's face go white. Our eyes met, and in that moment, I knew she'd been keeping this secret for 30 years. The truth was right there, waiting to destroy everything, and I was the one holding the match. I spent 3 days avoiding Jasper's calls while I tried to figure out what to do with the truth burning a hole in my pocket. The old photo of Mom and Reggie sat on my desk like a ticking bomb, while dozens of unanswered messages filled my phone. Finally, Jasper showed up at my lab. You can't just disappear on me, he said, his voice tight with hurt. Not with everything that's happening. I couldn't meet his eyes. Instead, I stared at the genetic analysis on my computer screen, the one that proved what I'd suspected since that day in the hospital. Talk to me, Marley. What's going on? Before I could answer, my phone buzzed. Lorraine's name flashed on the screen. I declined the call, but seconds later, a text appeared. We need to discuss what you think you know. Why is my mother texting you? Jasper asked, frowning at my phone. Because she's trying to protect her lies, I muttered, then immediately regretted it when I saw his expression. What lies? The lab door opened, and Tess walked in, freezing when she saw us. Oh, sorry, I didn't. No, stay, I said quickly. Having her there made me braver somehow. I need to show Jasper something anyway. My hands shook as I pulled up the blood type analysis. The reason you can't be a donor for Reggie. It's not just a simple mismatch. Marley, Tess warned, but I couldn't stop now. These markers show a complete genetic impossibility. According to this data, Reggie can't be your biological father. The silence that followed was deafening. Jasper stared at the screen, then at me, his face draining of color. That's impossible, he whispered. There must be a mistake. I ran the tests 3 times. I reached for the old photograph. And then I found this. Jasper took the photo, his hands trembling slightly. When was this? Summer of '93. 9 months before you were born. The lab door burst open. Lorraine stood there, breathing hard like she'd run all the way from the parking lot. That's enough, she snapped. Jasper, come with me. Now, did you know? Jasper's voice was barely audible. All this time, did you know? Lorraine's face hardened. This isn't the place. It's a simple question, Mother. Did you know? Everything I did was to protect you, she said, her composure cracking. To protect our family name. By lying to me my entire life? Jasper's laugh was hollow. Who is my real father? Lorraine's eyes darted to the photo in his hands, then to me. This is your fault, she hissed. You couldn't leave well enough alone, could you? Just like your mother, always destroying everything she touches. What does my mother have to do with this? I demanded, but something in Lorraine's expression made my blood run cold. Ask her about Thomas Bennett, she said, her voice dripping with venom. Ask her what really happened the night he disappeared. The name hit me like a physical blow. Thomas Bennett, I'd seen it before in old newspaper clippings I'd found while researching the Caldwell family history. He'd been Reggie's business partner until he vanished without a trace 30 years ago. Jasper looked between us, his world visibly crumbling. I need some air, he muttered, heading for the door. Jas, wait. I reached for him, but he pulled away. Don't, he said. Just don't. After he left, Lorraine turned to me with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. You wanted the truth? Congratulations. Now we all get to live with it. She walked out, leaving me standing there with Tess, the weight of unspoken secrets threatening to suffocate me. Thomas Bennett, I said quietly. Why does that name feel important? Tess was already typing on her computer. Because according to this old article, he was last seen leaving a meeting with Reggie Caldwell and a nurse named Evelyn Finch. My mother. The night before she left town, pregnant with me. The truth wasn't just uncomfortable anymore. It was dangerous. I found my mother in her garden, methodically pulling weeds like her world wasn't about to implode. The newspaper clipping about Thomas Bennett felt heavy in my pocket. Who was he? I asked without preamble. Mom's hands stilled in the dirt. She didn't turn around. Who? Thomas Bennett. Reggie's missing business partner. The man who disappeared the night before you left town, pregnant with me. The trowel in her hand clattered to the ground. When she finally faced me, her expression was one I'd never seen before. Raw fear. Where did you hear that name? Lorraine Caldwell seemed pretty interested in what you might know about his disappearance. Mom stood slowly, brushing dirt from her knees. Come inside. In her kitchen, she pulled a dusty box from the top shelf of her pantry. Inside was a stack of letters, all addressed to Thomas Bennett. He was your father, she said quietly. And he was going to leave everything, his family, his share of the business, to be with us. Was. Her hands trembled as she sorted through the letters. The night he disappeared, he was meeting with Reggie to sign over his part of the company. I was supposed to meet them afterward, but when I got there, she swallowed hard. There was blood in Reggie's office. Not much, but enough. My phone buzzed, another message from Jasper. We need to talk. About everything. Did Reggie kill him? I asked, my voice barely a whisper. I don't know. Mom's eyes filled with tears. But Lorraine was there that night too. She saw me outside the office. The next day, she came to my apartment with an envelope full of cash and a warning. Leave town or she'd tell the police I was involved. So you ran. I ran to protect you. She grabbed my hand. Marley, you need to stop digging. These people, they're dangerous when they're cornered. My phone buzzed again. This time it was Felicity, meet me at the hospital. There's something you need to see. I have to go, I said standing. Marley, please. Did you ever think that maybe the truth would protect me better than lies? At the hospital, I found Felicity in Reggie's room. He was asleep, machines beeping steadily around him. Look at this, she said, handing me a folder. Inside were more blood test results, not Jasper's but Reggie's. These patterns, I muttered, scanning the data. They're similar too. To yours, Felicity finished. I had the lab run a comparison. Marley, Reggie isn't just Jasper's uncle. He's your father. The room spun. That's impossible. My father was Thomas Bennett. That's what Evelyn believed. But Reggie, he and your mother. It was before Thomas disappeared. A harsh laugh from the doorway made us both jump. Lorraine stood there, her perfect makeup unable to hide her fury. So now you know, she said. The great Reggie Caldwell, sleeping with his partner's girlfriend while playing the devoted family man. And you, she pointed at me, you're the living proof of his betrayal. Does Jasper know? I asked. Know what? That his fiancée is his cousin? That his whole life is built on lies. Lorraine's smile was cruel. Not yet. But imagine what it would do to him. You can't. Can't what? Tell the truth? Isn't that what you wanted? She stepped closer. Here's the deal. Walk away from Jasper, from all of this, or I'll make sure everyone knows exactly what kind of family they're really part of. Behind her, Reggie's monitors started beeping faster. His eyes were open, watching us. Enough, he rasped. But the truth was already unraveling, spinning out of control. I looked at my father, not Thomas Bennett, but Reggie Caldwell, and saw 30 years of secrets threatening to destroy everyone I loved. The question wasn't whether to tell Jasper anymore. The question was, who would break his heart first? The hospital room felt smaller with each passing second as Reggie struggled to sit up in his bed. Lorraine moved to stop him, but he waved her away. Get out, he wheezed. Both of you. I need to speak with Marley alone. Lorraine's face twisted. You're not thinking clearly. Now. His voice carried the authority of a man who'd spent decades giving orders. After they left, silence stretched between us like a chasm. I looked at his monitors. Anywhere but his face. I should have told you years ago, he finally said. Which part? That you're my father? Or that you killed Thomas Bennett? His heart rate spiked on the monitor. Is that what Evelyn thinks? That I killed him? Did you? No. He closed his eyes. But I know who did. Before he could continue, Jasper appeared in the doorway. His face was ashen, his phone clutched in his hand. I just got the strangest call from Mother, he said. Something about DNA tests and family secrets. His eyes moved between us. What's going on? My throat closed up. Behind Jasper, I saw Lorraine smirking from the hallway. Son, Reggie started. Don't. Jasper's voice cracked. Just tell me the truth. All of it. Reggie's monitors began beeping faster. A nurse rushed in, checking his vitals. You need to leave, she said. His blood pressure's too high. Not until someone explains. The machines erupted in alarm. Reggie clutched his chest, gasping. Medical staff flooded the room, pushing us into the hallway. Code blue, someone shouted. Jasper grabbed my arm. What did you do? I didn't. First the blood tests, then Mother's call, now this? His fingers dug into my skin. What are you trying to prove? That everything you think you know is a lie. The words burst out before I could stop them. His grip loosened. What? Reggie isn't your father, Jazz. He's mine. The color drained from his face. Behind us, the medical team was still working on Reggie, their shouts echoing through the corridor. That's impossible, Jasper whispered. The genetic tests prove it. And there's more. Thomas Bennett. Stop. He backed away. Just stop. Jasper, please. We're cousins. His laugh was hollow. All this time, were you investigating me? Using your science to what? Expose my family. I was trying to understand my own family. Well, congratulations. His voice was ice. You've destroyed both of them. From the hospital room came the long, steady tone of a flatline. Time of death, 9:47 p.m., someone announced. Jasper's face crumpled. He turned and ran down the hallway as doctors emerged from Reggie's room, shaking their heads. Lorraine appeared at my side. Are you happy now? She hissed. You've killed him, just like your mother killed Thomas. I spun to face her. What did you say? Oh, you didn't know that part? Her smile was venomous. Ask dear Evelyn about the syringe they found in Thomas's office. The one with her fingerprints on it. My phone buzzed, a text from my mother. Don't trust Lorraine. She's the one who killed Thomas. I have proof. But when I looked up, Lorraine was already walking away, her heels clicking on the hospital floor like a countdown. Behind me, they were covering Reggie's body. My father, the man who might have finally told me the truth about that night 30 years ago. I stood alone in the hallway, caught between my dead father and my fleeing almost husband, while 30 years of lies unraveled around me. Somewhere in this mess was the truth about Thomas Bennett's death, but finding it might cost me everything I had left. My phone buzzed again. An unknown number. I know what really happened that night. Meet me at the old factory. Come alone. The choice was simple. Walk away and lose everything, or dive deeper and risk destroying what little remained of both families. I headed for my car. Some truths are worth burning for. The old factory loomed against the night sky, its broken windows like jagged teeth. I killed my car's headlights and checked my phone one last time. 3 missed calls from Mom, 2 from Tess, and a single text from Jasper. Don't do anything stupid. Too late for that. A figure emerged from the shadows near the loading dock. Felicity, still wearing her hospital clothes. I wasn't sure you'd come, she said. You know what happened to Thomas Bennett? She nodded toward the rusted door. Better show you. Inside, moonlight filtered through the holes in the roof, casting strange shadows across abandoned machinery. Felicity led me to an old office, pulling a weathered envelope from her purse. Lorraine didn't just kill Thomas, she said. She killed your father too. Reggie died of organ failure. After 30 years of slow poisoning. Her hands shook as she opened the envelope. I found these in her safe. Receipts for something called thallium. She's been adding it to Reggie's tea for decades. Why? Because he was going to leave her for your mother. Another voice, Lorraine's, cut through the darkness. She stepped out from behind a column, holding something that glinted in the moonlight. A gun. Always the dramatic reveal. Felicity? Lorraine's laugh was brittle. Couldn't just let the past stay buried? Like you buried Thomas? I asked. Thomas was a mistake. He found out what I was planning for Reggie and threatened to expose me. She moved closer, the gun steady. But Reggie? That was art. Slow, untraceable. Until you started digging. Footsteps echoed behind me. Jasper appeared, his face a mask of horror. Mother. Jasper. Lorraine's composure cracked. You weren't supposed to be here. I followed Marley. His voice was hollow. I don't know what I thought. But not this. Everything I did was for you, Lorraine insisted. To protect your inheritance, your future. By killing my father? His laugh was bitter. Which one? The man who raised me, or my real father? Thomas was weak, Lorraine spat. He would have ruined everything. Just like she's trying to do. The gun swung toward me. You want to know the truth, Jasper? Felicity pulled out another paper. Your real father was Thomas Bennett. And Lorraine killed him the night he was going to tell you. The gun wavered. Shut up. That's why she hates Marley so much, Felicity continued. Because Marley is living proof of what Reggie did, sleeping with Evelyn while Thomas was falling for Lorraine. Stop. Lorraine's finger tightened on the trigger. I saw it then. The same desperate need for control that had driven her to poison her husband, to kill Thomas, to manipulate everyone around her for decades. You can't shoot all of us, I said quietly. And you can't bury this truth. Watch me. She aimed at my heart. The gunshot was deafening. Lorraine screamed, the gun flying from her hand. Blood bloomed on her shoulder. My mother stepped from the shadows, holding a small revolver. 30 years ago, you made me run, she said. Not this time. Police sirens wailed in the distance. Jasper moved toward his mother, but stopped, his face conflicted. I called them, he said. When I followed Marley. I recorded everything. Lorraine lunged for her dropped gun. Another shot rang out, this time from a police officer entering through the back door. As they led Lorraine away in handcuffs, Jasper turned to me. We're not cousins. No. But we're still tangled in this mess. Yes. He looked at the factory's broken windows, at the moonlight painting shadows across 3 decades of secrets. I don't know if I can. I know, I said. Neither do I. Sometimes the truth doesn't set you free. Sometimes it just shows you how trapped you really are. Behind us, evidence teams began documenting 30 years of carefully constructed lies. Ahead of us lay the wreckage of 2 families bound by blood, betrayal, and a truth that none of us had wanted to find. 6 months after Lorraine's arrest, I stood in front of Reggie's grave with a handful of white roses. The autumn wind scattered leaves across the fresh dirt of Thomas Bennett's newly discovered remains, finally laid to rest in the plot next door. Ready? Jasper's voice was soft behind me. I nodded, placing the roses on both graves. We hadn't spoken much since that night at the factory, both needing time to process the wreckage of our shared history. But yesterday, he'd called. They're reading the will today, he said now, hands in his pockets. You should be there. The lawyer's office felt too small for the weight of everything that had happened. Felicity sat quietly in the corner while my mother held my hand. The envelope the lawyer produced bore Reggie's signature, dated just hours before his death. "To my children," he began, "both the one I raised and the one I should have." I squeezed Mom's hand as the lawyer detailed Reggie's final wishes. The eco-friendly store chain would be split equally between Jasper and me. But it was the second envelope that changed everything. "In the event of my death," the lawyer read, "this evidence should be turned over to the authorities." Inside were documents proving Lorraine had been embezzling from the company for years, funneling money into offshore accounts. The final piece of revenge from a dying man. "He knew," Jasper said quietly, "about the poisoning. He was gathering evidence all along." After the reading, Jasper and I walked through the park where we'd had our first date. The autumn colors reminded me of that night, before we knew we were part of a tragedy 30 years in the making. "I found my father's journals," Jasper said suddenly. "Thomas Bennett's, I mean. He wrote about you, about hoping to be there when you were born." My throat tightened. What are we supposed to do with all this? Maybe it's not about doing anything. He stopped walking. Maybe it's about accepting that our parents were just people, making terrible decisions out of love and fear and jealousy. A text buzzed on my phone. News from the prosecutor. Lorraine had accepted a plea deal. 20 years for 2 murders and 3 decades of poisoning her husband. "She's not contesting anything," I told Jasper. "Good." His voice was firm. Some truths shouldn't stay buried. We reached the pond where he'd proposed, back when our biggest worry was whether his mother would approve of my dress. "I've been thinking," he said, "about that genetic research project you started before all this. The one about inherited traits." I smiled despite myself. "Bit close to home now. Maybe that's why it matters." He turned to face me. "We're not our parents' mistakes, Marley. We're what we choose to do with the truth." "And what do we choose?" Instead of answering, he pulled out a small box. Not a ring this time, but a key. "The old lab at the store's headquarters," he explained. "We could turn it into a genetic research facility. Use our inheritance to help people understand their own stories." It wasn't forgiveness, not exactly. But maybe it was something better, a way to build something new from the ashes of our shared past. "Partners?" he asked. "Partners," I agreed. Later that night, I found one last letter from Reggie, hidden in the will's envelope. "The truth is both poison and cure," he'd written. "Choose wisely which one you make it." I looked at the key in my hand, thinking about DNA and destiny, about choices and chances. Jasper and I might never fully untangle the roots of our family tree, but maybe we could grow something new, something honest, from its twisted branches. Sometimes the best revenge isn't about destroying the past. Sometimes it's about building a future strong enough to bear its weight. I picked up my phone and called Jasper. It was time to begin again. I never expected to find my father's last words in the false bottom of his old cigar box. Not on what was supposed to be a simple afternoon of sorting through his belongings with my fiancé Callum, but there it was, a cream-colored envelope with my name written in Dad's distinctive scrawl. "My name is Rowan," and until that moment, I thought I had processed my grief over losing my father 6 months ago. I was wrong. "What's that, darling?" Callum asked, peering over my shoulder as I held the envelope. His cologne, usually comforting, felt suddenly overwhelming in the stuffy attic of my childhood home. "I'm not sure." My fingers trembled as I traced Dad's handwriting. It was hidden in his favorite cigar box. Callum reached for the envelope, but I instinctively pulled it closer. Something about finding this letter, this secret, made me want to keep it to myself. Just for a moment. "Come on, love. Share with the class," he said with that charming smile that usually melted my defenses. But not this time. "I think I need some air," I managed, already heading for the attic stairs. "Could you finish boxing up the rest?" I didn't wait for his response. My heels clicked against the hardwood as I made my way to Dad's study, the one room in the house that still felt like him. The leather chair creaked as I sat behind his massive oak desk, the envelope now feeling heavier than it should. Inside, I found 2 pages filled with Dad's precise handwriting. "My dearest Rowan, if you're reading this, then either I'm gone, or you've become as nosy as your mother. I'm betting on the former, though I hope I'm wrong. There are things I need to tell you. things I should have said while I was alive. But timing and courage failed me, and now I can only hope this letter finds you before it's too late. You're probably wondering why I hid this letter. The truth is, I've discovered something that changes everything about our family's legacy, about the people close to you, and about the fortune everyone thinks I've left behind. Trust your instincts, sweetheart. They've always been sharper than mine. When something feels wrong, it usually is. Watch carefully those who seem most interested in what I've left behind. Not everything or everyone is what they appear to be. In my office safe combination your birthday, you'll find documents that will explain everything. But be discreet. Share this information with no one except your mother. She knows more than she lets on. Most importantly, remember that real wealth isn't always measured in dollars and cents. Sometimes it's measured in the wisdom to know who to trust. I love you, my girl. Stay strong. Dad. I read the letter 3 times, my heart pounding harder with each pass. What was Dad trying to tell me? And why the secrecy? A floorboard creaked behind me, and I quickly folded the letter, shoving it into my pocket. Callum appeared in the doorway, his smile slightly strained. Found you, he said, leaning against the doorframe. Everything okay? You rushed out rather quickly. Just needed a moment, I replied, forcing a smile. Dad stuff, you know? More emotional than I expected. He nodded sympathetically, but something in his eyes made me uneasy. Or maybe it was just Dad's words making me paranoid. Speaking of your father's things, Callum said, his tone carefully casual. Have you given any more thought to when we might meet with the estate lawyer? Just to get everything sorted before the wedding. The question seemed innocent enough, but combined with Dad's warning, it hit differently. Why was my fiancé so interested in my father's estate? Soon, I said vaguely, my hand unconsciously touching the letter in my pocket. There's still a lot to process. As Callum nodded and turned to leave, I glanced at the painting behind Dad's desk, the one concealing his safe. Whatever secrets lay behind it would have to wait until I was alone. But one thing was certain, nothing about this felt right. And Dad had taught me to trust my gut. I barely slept that night, Dad's letter burning a hole in my thoughts. The next morning, as I opened my boutique, my phone buzzed with a message from Callum. Mother insists on treating you to lunch. The plaza at 1? She won't take no for an answer. Great. Just what I needed. An afternoon with Gwendolyn Hayes and her surgical smile. The morning crawled by as I helped customers, my mind elsewhere. At 12:55, I walked into the plaza's restaurant, spotting them immediately. Gwendolyn rose to greet me, her designer outfit perfectly coordinated, not a silver hair out of place. Darling, she air-kissed both my cheeks. You look exhausted. Wedding planning keeping you up. Just busy with the boutique, I said, sliding into my seat. Callum squeezed my hand under the table, but something felt off about his touch. Speaking of the boutique, Gwendolyn said, sipping her martini, Callum tells me you're still operating out of that quaint little space downtown. Have you considered expanding? Now that you'll have access to more resources. I felt my shoulders tense. The current location works perfectly for my needs. But surely with your father's estate settled, Callum began. Which hasn't happened yet. I cut in sharper than intended. The waiter's arrival provided a welcome interruption. Throughout lunch, Gwendolyn steered the conversation repeatedly toward my father's business dealings, each question wrapped in a layer of saccharine concern. Arthur was such a brilliant businessman. He must have taught you so much about investing, dear. Dad believed in learning by doing, I replied carefully. He let me make my own mistakes. How noble, Gwendolyn said, her smile not quite reaching her eyes. Though I hope he left you better prepared for managing his estate. Such responsibility can be overwhelming for someone used to running a small shop. My phone buzzed, a message from my mother. Need to see you. Important. Come by the house after work. Excuse me, I said, standing abruptly. Emergency at the boutique. I need to go. But we haven't discussed the wedding venue options, Gwendolyn protested. Another time. I grabbed my purse, avoiding Callum's questioning look. As I reached the restaurant's entrance, I realized I'd forgotten my scarf. Turning back, I froze at the sound of their voices from around the corner. She's becoming difficult, Gwendolyn hissed. If she starts digging too deeply before the wedding. I've got it under control, Mother, Callum interrupted. Once we're married, accessing the estate will be simple. Rowan trusts me. Does she? That display just now suggests otherwise. We can't afford another failure, Callum. The bank won't extend. I said I've got it handled, Callum snapped. Just stick to the plan. My hands shook as I pushed through the revolving door into the street. The cool air did nothing to calm the nausea rising in my throat. Dad's warning echoed in my head. Watch carefully those who seem most interested in what I've left behind. At 6, I pulled up to my childhood home, finding Mom in the garden. She looked up from her roses, her expression grave. I found something in Dad's study, she said without preamble. Something you need to see. She led me inside, pulling out a folder filled with bank statements and legal documents. Your father knew something was coming. He started moving assets around 3 months before he died. What are you saying? I'm saying the estate everyone's so interested in, it's not what they think. She hesitated. And Callum's family? They're not who they pretend to be. Mom, what do you know about them? She opened her mouth to answer, but her phone rang, Gwendolyn's name flashing on the screen. Mom declined the call with a grimace. She's been calling all day, wanting to catch up, Mom said. Listen to me carefully, Rowan. Don't sign anything. Don't agree to anything. And whatever you do, don't tell them about. The doorbell rang, cutting her off. Through the front window, I caught a glimpse of Callum's familiar silhouette. Back door, Mom whispered, shoving the folder into my hands. Go. We'll talk tomorrow. As I slipped out through the garden, I heard Callum's voice. Evening, Lila. Is Rowan here? We need to discuss the wedding plans. I clutched the folder to my chest, my engagement ring suddenly feeling like a dead weight on my finger. What exactly had I gotten myself into? I spent the night poring over the documents Mom had given me, each page revealing another crack in the perfect facade of my life. By morning, my dining room table looked like a crime scene investigation, with papers spread everywhere and my father's letter propped against an empty wine glass. The doorbell rang at 7 a.m. Through the peephole, I saw Mom, looking like she hadn't slept either. You need to see this, she said, brushing past me with a laptop. I've been up all night digging through your father's old emails. The Hayes family, they've done this before. She pulled up article after article. Different names, different cities, but the same pattern. Wealthy families, sudden marriages, mysterious bankruptcies. They're not even using their real names, Mom said, her voice tight. Gwendolyn Hayes was Gwendolyn Porter 5 years ago. And Callum? My phone buzzed. Callum's face lit up the screen. Don't answer, Mom whispered. I let it go to voicemail, but my hands were shaking. I need to check the safe, I said. Dad's safe in his study. He mentioned it in the letter. 20 minutes later, we stood in Dad's study. I entered my birthday into the safe's keypad, hearing the satisfying click. Inside, we found more documents, a USB drive, and a small red notebook. Your father's private ledger, Mom said, reaching for it. The front door opened downstairs. Callum's voice echoed through the house. Rowan, your car's outside. Are you here? Mom shoved the notebook into my hands. Backstairs. Go. I'll handle him. I slipped out just as Callum's footsteps reached the study. Lila, I didn't expect to find you here. My house, remember? The better question is why you're here, letting yourself in without knocking. Their voices faded as I made my way through the garden. In my car, I opened the notebook with trembling fingers. Numbers, dates, and names filled the pages. But one entry made my blood run cold. Hayes connection confirmed. Same group from the Morrison case. Protecting Rowan must come first. My phone buzzed again, a text from Callum. Where are you? We need to talk about the wedding. Mother's worried you're having doubts. Another text followed. By the way, did you remove anything from your father's study? Some papers seemed to be missing. The calm mask I'd been wearing cracked. I started my car and drove to the one place I could think clearly, my boutique. But as I unlocked the door, I found Gwendolyn waiting inside. Security let me in, she said smoothly. We need to talk, dear. How did you know you'd come here? You're so like your father, always retreating to work when things get complicated. Her smile turned sharp. He did the same thing, right before he died. The temperature in the room seemed to drop. What do you know about my father's death? Only that stress can do terrible things to a person's heart. She examined her manicured nails. especially when they're trying to protect certain secrets. My phone buzzed again. Callum, found the safe open. Mother's waiting at your shop. Let's talk this through like family. You know, Gwendolyn continued. Marriages are about trust. About sharing everything, including burdens, secrets, inheritances. I thought about Dad's warning, about Mom's discoveries, about the notebook burning a hole in my bag, about all the signs I'd ignored because I wanted to believe in love. You're right, I said, my voice steady despite my racing heart. Let's talk about trust. And about the Morrison case. Gwendolyn's perfectly composed face flickered for just a moment. I don't know what you're. Or should I call you Mrs. Porter? I pulled out my phone, showing her the articles Mom had found. That was your name when you pulled this same scam in Seattle, wasn't it? The shop's door chimed. Callum walked in, his face dark. Rowan, whatever you think you know. I know enough, I cut him off, backing toward my office. And soon, everyone else will too. I hadn't planned what to say next. But as I looked at their faces, Gwendolyn's mask of concern cracking, Callum's charm turning to something uglier, I realized Dad had been preparing me for this moment all along. The question was, what would I do with the truth? I decided to play their game. After the confrontation at my boutique, I pretended to accept Callum's explanations, his promises, his lies. But I kept digging, and what I found made my stomach turn. The USB drive from Dad's safe contained emails, hundreds of them. Correspondence between Dad and someone named Marcus Morrison. As I read through them late one night, my hands started shaking. Arthur, they're getting closer. Gwendolyn Porter and her son have already emptied the Peterson account. Sarah Peterson killed herself last week. We can't let them do this to another family. My phone lit up with a text from Callum. Late meeting. Rain check on dinner. I grabbed my keys and drove to his office building downtown. His car was there, but the lights were off in his window. The security guard recognized me. Mr. Hayes left about an hour ago with a woman. Headed toward the Archer Hotel. The Archer. Of course. Where else would you take your secret girlfriend while your fiancé sits at home, reading about how you destroyed other families? I found his car in the hotel parking lot. Sitting there, watching the entrance, I felt oddly calm, like everything was finally making sense. The rushed engagement, the constant questions about Dad's estate, the way he always changed the subject when I mentioned prenuptial agreements. My phone buzzed. Mom, don't do anything rash. Come home. There's more you need to know. But I was already walking into the hotel, Dad's voice echoing in my head. Trust your instincts. The desk clerk didn't even hesitate when I mentioned being Callum's fiancé. Oh yes, Mr. Hayes is in the bar with Miss Peterson. Peterson. Like Sarah Peterson, who killed herself. They were sitting in a corner booth, heads close together. The woman was young, beautiful, and wearing an engagement ring that looked exactly like mine. I walked straight to their table, phone recording in my pocket. Callum, darling. Funny running into you here during your late meeting. He jumped like he'd been shocked. Rowan. I can explain. Let me guess, I said, turning to the woman. He told you about his family's investment firm? About how he could help manage your inheritance. And of course, he fell madly in love with you along the way. The woman's face went pale. Who are you? I'm his fiancé. One of them anyway. And I'm guessing you're related to Sarah Peterson. My sister, she whispered. How did you? Because my father tried to stop them before they killed her. I pulled out my phone, showing her the emails. They've done this before. Multiple times. Callum's charm vanished, replaced by something cold and hard. You've been going through private documents? Funny how you're more worried about that than being caught with your other fiancé. He grabbed my arm, fingers digging in. Let's discuss this privately. Take your hand off her. The new voice belonged to a man standing behind us, tall, gray-haired, familiar from photos in Dad's emails. Marcus Morrison. Miss Everly, he said, your father asked me to watch over you if anything happened to him. I've been waiting for you to figure it out. Callum's grip tightened. This is a private matter. Actually, said another voice mom, walking in with 2 police detectives, it's now a criminal matter. Fraud, theft, and conspiracy charges tend to be very public. Callum released my arm, his face twisting. You don't understand. My mother is already in custody, one detective said. We picked her up trying to access your father's business accounts 20 minutes ago. As they led Callum away, I sat down heavily in the booth. The other woman, Peterson's sister, was crying quietly. I almost fell for it too, I told her. They're very good at what they do. Mom sat beside me, holding my hand. Your father would be proud. He spent years trying to expose them. Did they? I couldn't finish the question. We can't prove they caused your father's heart attack, Marcus said quietly. But the stress of trying to protect you from them certainly didn't help. I twisted my engagement ring off my finger, feeling its weight one last time. Then let's finish what Dad started. The ring clattered onto the table, and with it, the last of my illusions about love and trust. But something stronger was taking their place, a determination to make things right, to protect others from falling into the same trap. Dad had tried to warn me. Now it was my turn to warn others. The morning after Callum's arrest, I sat in Marcus Morrison's office, surrounded by evidence of my father's secret crusade. Files, photos, and financial records covered every surface, each telling a story of another family destroyed by the Hayes schemes. Your father wasn't just tracking them, Marcus said, sliding a thick folder across his desk. He was building a case. But he needed absolute proof of their connection to Sarah Peterson's death. I opened the folder, finding photographs of Callum with different women, all wearing similar engagement rings. All from wealthy families. All now bankrupt or worse. Why didn't Dad just go to the police? Marcus's expression darkened. He tried. But Gwendolyn had connections in high places. Each time we got close, charges would mysteriously disappear. Witnesses would recant. My phone buzzed, a text from an unknown number. We should talk. About Arthur. About what really happened to him. Gee. Gwendolyn, I whispered, showing Marcus the message. He reached for his phone, but I stopped him. Wait. Maybe we should hear what she has to say. It's too dangerous. Dad died trying to stop them. I need to know why. The county jail's visiting room was cold and sterile. Gwendolyn sat across from me, her designer outfit replaced by an orange jumpsuit, but her composure remained intact. I knew you'd come, she said, studying me. You have your father's curiosity. His determination. It's what got him killed, you know. My hands clenched under the table. What do you mean? Arthur was getting too close. He'd discovered our offshore accounts, our connections to certain influential people. People who couldn't afford exposure. She leaned forward. But he made a mistake. He tried to warn the wrong person. Who? Check his calendar for March 15th. The day before his heart attack. Her smile turned predatory. But be careful, dear. Some truths are better left buried. Back at Dad's house, I found his old planner in his desk. March 15th had a single entry. Dinner, Judge Matthews. My blood ran cold. Judge Matthews, the same judge who had dismissed 3 cases against the Hayes family. Mom appeared in the doorway. I was hoping you wouldn't find that. You knew. Your father told me everything the night before he died. He was going to expose Judge Matthews' connection to Gwendolyn. But someone warned them. I stared at her, realization dawning. The morning of his heart attack, you said he had a breakfast meeting. With his old friend from the DA's office. Mom's voice cracked. Who happened to be Judge Matthews' brother-in-law? My phone buzzed again, Marcus. Found something in the offshore accounts. Come quickly. At his office, Marcus pulled up financial records on his computer. Look at these transfers. The morning of Arthur's death, someone moved millions between accounts. But the signature algorithm matches. Matches what? Your boutique's corporate account. Someone used your business to launder their money. And the authorization. He pointed to a familiar name on the screen. My heart stopped. The authorization came from my accountant, the one Callum had recommended when we got engaged. They were setting me up, I whispered. If Dad had exposed them, you would have gone down too. Marcus ran a hand through his gray hair. Arthur figured it out too late. He had to choose between exposing them and protecting you. My phone buzzed one last time. Another unknown number, like father, like daughter. Back off or history repeats itself. Some hearts just can't take the strain. I thought about Dad, about his final choice, about the legacy he left me, about justice and revenge, and the fine line between them. We need to end this, I said, my voice steady despite my racing heart. Not just for Dad, but for everyone they've hurt. Marcus nodded grimly. But they're watching you now. One wrong move. Then we'll give them exactly what they're watching for. I pulled out Dad's notebook, flipping to the last page. Dad left a plan. A way to trap them all. Judges, lawyers, everyone. But it's risky. How risky? I met his eyes. I'll have to die first. The plan was insane. Dangerous. Probably illegal. But as I thought about Sarah Peterson, about my father, about all the lives destroyed by greed and corruption, I knew there was no other choice. Sometimes to serve justice, you have to be willing to lose everything. The plan was simple. Fake my own death, make it look like another victim of the Hayes family schemes. But nothing prepares you for reading your own obituary. Tragic accident claims local businesswoman. The headline read, the article detailed how I'd apparently driven my car off Clayton Bridge after discovering irregularities in my boutique's finances. The same bridge where Sarah Peterson had died. I watched the funeral from Marcus's car, parked far enough away to stay hidden. Mom knew the truth, of course, she had to. But watching her pretend to grieve, seeing the real tears of my employees and friends, it felt like dying for real. Callum showed up in a perfectly tailored black suit, playing the devastated fiancé. Even from a distance, I could see him working the crowd, probably already sizing up his next target. They're taking the bait, Marcus said, checking his phone. Judge Matthews just called an emergency meeting with Gwendolyn's lawyer. But something felt wrong. Callum was too composed, too calculated in his movements. Like he was performing for someone. That night, I snuck into my boutique's office, using the back entrance key I'd never turned in. I needed to check the safe to make sure the evidence we'd planted was still there. The office door was already unlocked. I was wondering when you'd show up. Callum sat in my chair, his feet propped on my desk. Behind him stood Judge Matthews and two men I didn't recognize. You really are your father's daughter, Callum said, smiling that charming smile I'd once loved. He tried the same trick. Faking evidence, planning his big reveal. Right up until his heart gave out. Gave out. I kept my voice steady. You mean until you made it give out. Potassium chloride, one of the unknown men said. Untraceable in most toxicology reports. Especially when the victim has a history of heart problems. My blood ran cold. They hadn't just let Dad die, they'd murdered him. The question is, Judge Matthews said, what should we do with you? You can't touch me, I said. Everything's already been sent to the FBI. No, Callum replied, it hasn't. Because Marcus Morrison won't be delivering anything to anyone. My phone buzzed. A photo appeared, Marcus's car, wrapped around a tree. Another accident. You see, Callum continued, standing, we own this city. The police, the judges, even some of those federal agents you were counting on. Your father never understood that. But you will. The two men moved to block the door. Judge Matthews pulled out a small vial. The thing about faking your death, Callum said, is that sometimes it becomes real. I backed away, but my heel caught on the carpet. As I stumbled, I caught a glimpse of movement outside the office window, a flash of gray hair. Before you kill me, I said, playing for time, don't you want to know where the real evidence is? Callum's smile faltered. What real evidence? Dad's backup plan. The one even Marcus didn't know about. I forced a laugh. Did you really think he'd trust everything to one person? The men exchanged glances. Judge Matthews stepped forward. Where is it? In a safe deposit box. Time locked. If I don't enter the code every 24 hours, everything goes public. She's bluffing, Callum snapped, but uncertainty crept into his voice. A siren wailed in the distance, growing closer. Maybe I am, I said. Want to risk it? Because this time, I made sure everyone would know exactly who to blame for my death. The sirens were definitely heading our way now. Judge Matthews grabbed Callum's arm. We need to go. Now. They rushed out the back door, just as police cars screeched to a stop outside. Mom burst in through the front, followed by FBI agents. Real ones this time. Marcus? I asked. Safe, Mom said, hugging me. He called us as soon as he spotted them following you. I sagged against her, the adrenaline draining away. We'd gotten what we needed. Judge Matthews and his thugs on camera, confessing to Dad's murder. But Callum had slipped away again. He'll be back, I said, watching the agents photograph the vial they'd left behind. He won't be able to help himself. Mom squeezed my hand. Then we'll be ready. But as I stood in my darkened office, surrounded by evidence of how deep the corruption went, I wondered if anyone could ever really be ready for what was coming next. 3 days after the confrontation at my boutique, Callum walked right into our trap. He showed up at Dad's estate auction, the one I'd arranged to settle outstanding debts. The great room was packed with potential buyers, but I spotted him immediately, lurking near the back. He'd grown careless, desperate, just as Dad's notes predicted he would. Law 156, the auctioneer announced. Arthur Everly's private safe contents, unopened. Bidding starts at $50,000. Callum's hand shot up immediately. No surprise there. He thought Dad's evidence was inside. I let him win the bid. Congratulations, sir, I said, approaching him afterward. Would you like to open it now? His eyes narrowed. You're supposed to be dead. Sorry to disappoint. Again. I gestured to the safe. Shall we? He followed me to a private room, where Marcus and Mom waited with the FBI agents. But Callum just smiled. That familiar, confident smile that once made me trust him. You still don't get it, do you? He pulled out his phone. One call and certain judges will make sure that all evidence disappears. I opened the safe. Like this evidence? Inside lay a single envelope, addressed to him. What game are you playing? Open it. His hands shook slightly as he tore open the envelope. Inside was a single photo Callum with Judge Matthews, taken the night of Dad's death. There's no proof, he started. Check your phone, Marcus said. Callum's screen lit up with a video security footage from my boutique, showing his entire confession about Dad's murder. Already viral, I said. Every news outlet in the country has it. Judge Matthews was arrested an hour ago. And your mother. I paused. Well, she made a deal. You're lying. But sweat beaded on his forehead. She told him everything, Callum. About Sarah Peterson, about Dad, about all of it. See, that's the thing about people like you and your mother. You never really trust each other. He lunged for the door, but FBI agents blocked his path. One more thing, I said, pulling out Dad's notebook. Remember when I mentioned a safety deposit box? With time-locked evidence. His face went pale. There wasn't one. But you believed it because you knew Dad was smart enough to have a backup plan. Want to know what his real plan was? I opened the notebook to its last page. He knew you'd kill him eventually. Knew you'd come after me next. So he left a trail, breadcrumbs for me to follow, evidence scattered across dozens of accounts and locations, each piece meaningless alone, but together. You're bluffing, he whispered, but his charm had cracked completely. The auction? The safe? All staged. While you were focused on them, FBI agents were raiding every location listed in Dad's notebook. Your entire network is exposed. Callum's composure finally shattered. He spun toward me, rage replacing his usual calculated control. He deserved it. They all deserved it. These self-righteous rich families, looking down on people like us. People like you, I corrected, who think they're entitled to take whatever they want, no matter who they hurt. At least I'm honest about what I am, he snarled. You're no better, playing these games, manipulating people. The difference is I learned from the best. I stepped closer. You taught me how to lie, Callum. How to manipulate. How to make people see what I wanted them to see. I just used it better than you. As the agents led him away, he turned back one last time. Your father was weak. He died afraid. No, Mom said, speaking for the first time. He died protecting what mattered most. That's not weakness. It's the greatest strength there is. I watched them take him away, feeling neither triumph nor satisfaction, just a quiet certainty that Dad would have understood. Marcus touched my shoulder. It's over. But I knew it wasn't. Not completely. There would always be people like Callum, like Gwendolyn, like Judge Matthews. The only question was whether there would be enough people willing to stand against them. Dad had made his choice. Now I'd made mine. 6 months after Callum's arrest, I stood in Dad's study one last time. The house had sold yesterday, but there was one final thing I needed to do. The safe opened with a familiar click. Inside lay a single key I'd never noticed before, taped to the back wall. A sticky note accompanied it, for when you're ready. Dad. Mom appeared in the doorway. I wondered when you'd find that. You knew about it? She nodded. Arthur left instructions. Said you'd know when it was time. The key led us to a small law firm downtown, to a safety deposit box that had been paid up for 50 years. Inside, I found another letter. My dearest Rowan, if you're reading this, then you faced your storm and emerged stronger. I always knew you would. What you found wasn't just about justice. It was about understanding that true strength lies not in revenge, but in protecting others from experiencing the same pain. There's one last thing I need to tell you. The boutique you built? It wasn't just your dream. It was mine too. A legitimate business, built on honest work and real connections. Everything I wished I'd done differently. Check the account number below. It's your real inheritance. Not money from schemes or manipulation, but from 20 years of quiet investments in people who needed second chances. People like us. Use it wisely. Use it kindly. I love you, Dad. The account contained millions, all legitimate, all traceable to small business loans Dad had given over the years. Loans that had been paid back with interest and gratitude. That evening, I sat with Marcus in my boutique, watching the sunset through the windows. Sarah Peterson's sister called, he said. The foundation you started with your father's money? It's already helped 3 families avoid foreclosure. I nodded, thinking of all the other families out there, vulnerable to people like Callum. Dad's letter said strength lies in protection, not revenge. I think I finally understand what he meant. Speaking of Callum, Marcus hesitated. He's offering to testify against the remaining network. Wants a deal. Let him, I said. The truth matters more than punishment. My phone buzzed, a text from Mom. Found something else in the study. Come quick. At the house, Mom handed me a small box. Inside was Dad's old watch, the one he always wore. But something was different about it. Press the crown, Mom said. The watch face popped open, revealing a hidden compartment. Inside was a micro SD card and another note. For the next time someone like them comes along. Because they always do. Love, Dad. I smiled, sliding the card into my phone. More evidence, more names, more connections. Dad's insurance policy for the future. He knew, didn't he? I asked Mom. Knew I'd have to face something like this eventually? He knew you'd be strong enough when you did. She squeezed my hand. The question is, what will you do now? I thought about the foundation, about Dad's network of quiet investments, about all the people still vulnerable to schemes and manipulation. I'm going to do what Dad did, I said. Watch. Protect. Build something real. And if someone else like Callum comes along? I touched the watch, thinking of all it represented. Not just evidence and protection, but a father's love and foresight, a legacy of quiet strength. Then they'll learn what we learned, I said. That real power isn't in taking. It's in giving people the means to protect themselves. As we locked up the house one last time, I caught a glimpse of my reflection in the window. Stronger now, wiser, but still my father's daughter. Still carrying his legacy, but making it my own. The next morning, I opened my boutique early. A young woman waited outside, desperate, afraid, clutching papers that looked suspiciously like the ones Callum used to prepare. Can you help me? She asked. Someone said you might understand. I touched Dad's watch, feeling its weight against my wrist, and opened the door wider. Come in, I said. Let's talk about second chances. Some legacies, I've learned, aren't about money or revenge or even justice. They're about the choices we make when facing the darkness, and the light we choose to share afterward. Dad taught me that, and I intend to teach others. I never expected my life to unravel because of a plain white envelope. It was just sitting there on my doorstep, no return address, no markings, nothing but my name written in neat block letters. If I'd known what was inside, maybe I would have left it there. My name is Alara, and until that morning, I thought I had everything figured out. I'm the daughter of Grant and Celeste Winslow, founders of Winslow Wellness, and wife to Nolan Mercer, who runs our Denver branch. We were the perfect power couple, or at least that's what Forbes called us in their 30 Under 30 feature last year. I'd just gotten back from my morning run, still catching my breath in the elevator of our downtown Denver apartment building when I saw it. The envelope was slightly crooked, like whoever delivered it had been in a hurry. I picked it up, thinking it was probably another wedding invitation or charity gala request. Inside was a single sheet of paper with 3 sentences that made my stomach drop. Your husband isn't who you think he is. Check the company's financial records from the past 18 months, especially wire transfers to offshore accounts. Sometimes the people closest to us wear the best masks. I read it 3 times, my hands starting to shake. The paper felt heavy, expensive, not the kind you'd buy at Office Depot. Someone who knew what they were doing had sent this. My phone buzzed, making me jump. It was Nolan. Hey, beautiful, don't forget dinner with Mom and Tessa tonight. Mom's making her famous pot roast. I stared at his message, trying to reconcile my charming, successful husband with the implications in the letter. Nolan, who brought me coffee every morning and could make me laugh even during board meetings. Nolan, who my parents had practically adopted as their own son. Can't wait, I typed back, adding a heart emoji like I always did. My finger hovered over the send button before I added, love you. Inside our apartment, everything looked normal. Nolan's coffee mug was still in the sink, his tie from yesterday draped over a kitchen chair. But suddenly, all these familiar things felt like props in a play I didn't know I was part of. I sat down at my desk and opened my laptop, pulling up our company's financial records. As CFO, I had access to everything, but I rarely checked the Denver branch's details. I trusted Nolan to handle that. Now, looking at the numbers, something felt off. The totals added up, but there were small discrepancies in the reporting patterns. My phone buzzed again. This time it was my mother-in-law, Lorraine. Alara, dear, please remind Nolan to pick up wine for tonight. And wear that lovely blue dress I got you for Christmas. It photographs so well for the family album. I closed my eyes, remembering how Lorraine had accidentally tagged me in those family photos on Instagram 3 times. Always with captions about her successful power couple. She'd been pushing us to buy a bigger house, too. Something more fitting for the Winslow Mercer legacy. The front door opened, startling me. I quickly closed the financial records as Nolan walked in, looking perfectly put together in his tailored suit. You're home early, I said, hoping my voice sounded normal. Thought I'd surprise you. He smiled, that dimpled smile that still made my heart skip. Maybe we could grab lunch before heading to Mom's? I watched as he loosened his tie, noticing how his hand paused for just a second when he saw the envelope on the counter. It was so quick I almost missed it. Lunch sounds great, I said, standing up. Let me just change quickly. In our bedroom, I slipped the anonymous letter into my jewelry box. Whatever truth it held, I knew one thing for certain. I couldn't trust anyone until I figured out what was really going on. Not even the man I'd promised to love forever. As I changed clothes, I could hear Nolan humming in the kitchen, probably making coffee like he always did. Everything seemed so normal, but that letter had cracked my perfect world like a hammer to glass. The question was, how deep did the cracks really go? Lorraine Mercer's house always reminded me of a museum, beautiful to look at but don't touch anything. I sat at her pristine dining room table, watching her arrange flowers while Nolan and Tessa argued about some childhood memory in the kitchen. The pot roast was getting cold, but nobody seemed to care. Alara, darling, Lorraine said, not looking up from her roses, have you given any thought to that waterfront property I mentioned? The realtor says it won't stay on the market long. I gripped my wine glass tighter. We're happy where we are, Lorraine. Happy. Tessa emerged from the kitchen, wine glass already empty. In that shoebox apartment? Please. The Winslow heiress should be living somewhere that matches her status. Before I could respond, my phone buzzed. Another anonymous message. Ask them about the Cayman Islands account. My hand started shaking so badly, I almost dropped my phone. Nolan appeared behind me, placing his hands on my shoulders. Everything okay, babe? Fine, I said, quickly locking my screen. Just work stuff. Speaking of work, Lorraine chimed in. Nolan tells me the Denver branch is exceeding all expectations. You must be so proud of your husband, Alara. I forced a smile, remembering the financial discrepancies I'd spotted earlier. Very proud. Tessa snorted, pouring more wine. Must be nice, having everything handed to you. Some of us actually have to work for a living. Tessa, Lorraine warned, but her tone was indulgent, like a parent scolding a favorite child. What? We're family. We can be honest. Tessa's smile didn't reach her eyes. I mean, Alara's trust fund alone could put Jackson through college twice over. Where is Jackson? I asked, desperate to change the subject. Upstairs, probably hacking the Pentagon. Tessa rolled her eyes. He's going through this weird computer phase. Nolan squeezed my shoulders. Maybe he could intern at Winslow this summer? In the IT department. Actually, I said, surprising myself, that might be a good idea. We could use someone with fresh eyes on our security systems. The room went quiet. Too quiet. I looked up to find Nolan and Lorraine exchanging a look I couldn't quite read. I don't think that's necessary, Lorraine said quickly. Jackson needs to focus on his studies. Right, Tessa. Tessa was staring at her phone, suddenly distracted. Did you see this? The Martinez family just announced their daughter's engagement. God, their ring photo probably cost more than my car. The Martinezes? Lorraine perked up. Nolan, didn't you meet with Robert Martinez last week about that investment opportunity? Just a casual lunch, Nolan said, but his hands tightened on my shoulders. I frowned. I didn't know you were meeting with investors. Oh, it's all very preliminary, Lorraine waved her hand dismissively. But speaking of investments, Alara, I've been meaning to ask about increasing Nolan's stake in the company. After all, he's family now. My wine glass froze halfway to my lips. That would be a board decision, not mine. But surely your father would listen to you, Tessa pressed. I mean, you're his only heir. I stood up abruptly, my chair scraping against the hardwood floor. I need some air. As I headed for the back patio, I heard footsteps behind me. But instead of Nolan, it was Jackson who appeared at my side. They're always like this, he said quietly, hands stuffed in his hoodie pockets. Pushing and planning. Sometimes I listen to them through the air vents. I looked at him sharply. What do you mean? He glanced over his shoulder, then pulled out his phone. I have some recordings you might want to hear. But not here. Not now. Before I could respond, Nolan called from inside. Alara? Mom's serving dessert. Jackson quickly stepped away, but not before whispering, check your email tonight. Use a private network. I walked back inside, my mind racing. Across the table, Lorraine was serving perfect slices of cheesecake while Tessa showed Nolan something on her phone, both of them laughing. Everything looked normal, polished, perfect. But now I knew, somewhere in this beautiful house, hidden behind expensive flowers and family photos, there were air vents that held secrets. And a teenager who knew how to find them. I waited until 3 a.m. to check Jackson's email. Nolan was sound asleep beside me, his breathing steady and familiar. The laptop screen cast a blue glow across our bedroom as I connected to a private VPN, just like Jackson had instructed. The audio files were labeled by date. I clicked on the oldest one first, my hands trembling as I put in my earbuds. The company's worth billions now, Lorraine's voice crackled through. And she's the only heir. We need to move faster. I'm doing my best, Mom, Nolan's voice replied. My stomach clenched. But the offshore transfers take time. We can't risk anyone noticing. I closed my eyes, feeling sick. The next recording was worse. Just get her to sign over more control. Tessa this time. She trusts you completely. It's almost pathetic. Nolan's laugh. That's what makes it so easy. My wedding ring felt like it was burning my finger. I slipped it off, placing it on the nightstand. Beside me, Nolan stirred but didn't wake. The final recording was from last week. The Martinez deal could expose everything. Lorraine again. We need to move the money now, before Grant Winslow starts asking questions. I shut the laptop, my mind racing. The Martinez deal, the same one Nolan had dismissed as just lunch. I grabbed my phone, pulled up our banking app, and logged into my personal account. The balance looked normal, but something made me check the transaction history. There it was. Small transfers, nothing suspicious on their own, but they added up to millions over the past year. All going to an account I didn't recognize. Can't sleep? I nearly dropped my phone. Nolan was awake, watching me with those eyes I used to trust completely. Just checking some work stuff, I said, amazed at how steady my voice sounded. He reached for me, but I stood up. I need water. In the kitchen, I gripped the counter to stop my hands from shaking. My phone buzzed, another anonymous message. Check his laptop. Password, Tessa J, 2006. I glanced back toward the bedroom. Nolan had fallen asleep again. His laptop was in his briefcase by the door. The password worked. Inside, I found a folder labeled Personal. My heart pounding, I clicked through documents, bank statements, transfer records, emails between Nolan and his family discussing their plans, and photos. So many photos of Nolan with other women, in hotels I recognized from his business trips. Find what you're looking for? I spun around. Nolan stood in the doorway, his face unreadable in the darkness. How long? I asked. Does it matter? It matters to me. My voice cracked. It matters to my father, whose company you've been stealing from. He stepped closer. Your father's company? You mean the one you inherited just because you were born a Winslow? Some of us had to work for what we wanted. By stealing? By lying. I backed away, clutching his laptop. Was any of it real? His expression softened. Of course it was real. I love you, Ilera. But love doesn't pay for the life we deserve. The life we deserve? I laughed bitterly. Or the life your mother demands? His face hardened. You don't understand. You've never had to prove yourself worthy of anything. My phone buzzed again. This time it was Jackson. Get out now. Mom and Tessa are on their way over. They know you know. I'm calling my father, I said, reaching for my phone. Nolan moved faster than I expected, grabbing my wrist. You can't do that. Let go of me. Just listen. His voice was urgent now. We can fix this. Together. I'll show you everything, explain everything. Just don't make that call. The front door buzzed. Lorraine's voice came through the intercom. Nolan? Ilera? Open up, dears. We need to talk. I looked at my husband, this man I thought I knew, and saw a stranger. Behind his desperation, I finally saw the truth. I was never anything more than a means to an end. You're right, I said quietly. We do need to talk. All of us. I picked up my phone, starting with my father. The look on Nolan's face told me everything I needed to know about what would happen next. The morning after discovering Nolan's betrayal, I found myself sitting in my father's office, staring at the family photos on his desk. My hands were steady now, but my voice wasn't. Someone's been accessing our offshore accounts, I said, sliding Nolan's laptop across the desk. And it wasn't just company money. They got into my personal accounts too. Dad's face hardened as he scrolled through the files. How long have you known? Since last night. I twisted my now empty ring finger. Nolan's mother and sister are involved too. They've been planning this for years. The door opened and my mother rushed in. Grant, the board members are here. They're asking about the Martinez deal. What Martinez deal? I asked. Dad and Mom exchanged looks. Robert Martinez called this morning, Dad said carefully. Apparently, Nolan offered to sell him controlling interest in our Denver operations, using your voting shares as collateral. The room spun. He can't do that. I never signed anything. Actually, Mom pulled out a document. According to this, you did. 3 months ago. I grabbed the paper, my blood running cold. The signature looked exactly like mine, down to the way I crossed my T's. My phone buzzed. Jackson again. Don't trust the Martinez papers. They're forgeries. I can prove it. Before I could respond, Lorraine's name flashed across my screen. Then Tessa's. Then Nolan's. They're trying to damage control, I said, showing my parents the calls. They know I found everything. Let them panic, Dad said, reaching for his office phone. I'm calling security too. The office door burst open. Nolan strode in, followed by Robert Martinez himself. My heart stopped when I saw what Nolan was carrying, my old laptop. I think we all need to talk, Nolan said smoothly, about some very interesting transfers from the company's main accounts to a private one in the Cayman Islands. Transfers authorized by Ilera Winslow. What? I stood up so fast my chair toppled over. It's all here. Nolan held up my laptop. Every transaction, carefully hidden, along with some very interesting emails to offshore banks. Your daughter's been embezzling for months, Grant. My father's face went pale. That's impossible. Check for yourself. Nolan handed the laptop to Martinez. I discovered it last week. That's why I reached out to Robert, to protect the company from further damage. I stared at my husband, finally understanding. He hadn't just been stealing, he'd been setting me up as the fall guy all along. Nobody will believe this, I said, but my voice shook. They already do, Martinez said, showing us his phone. On the screen was a breaking news headline. Winslow Wellness Heir under investigation for financial misconduct. My mother gasped. Dad reached for me, but I stepped back, my mind racing. Then my phone buzzed again. Jackson, don't panic. I have backups of everything. And something else they don't know about. The board is waiting, Martinez said. They'll want answers. I looked at Nolan, at his perfect suit, his practiced concerned expression, the wedding ring he still wore like it meant something. Then I looked at my parents, seeing the doubt creeping into their eyes despite themselves. Okay, I said quietly. Let's go talk to the board. Nolan's smile flickered. He knew me well enough to be worried by my calm. As we walked to the boardroom, I sent one quick text to Jackson. Whatever you have, now's the time. Because Nolan had taught me something valuable. Sometimes the best revenge isn't about fighting back immediately. Sometimes it's about letting your enemies think they've won, right until the moment they realize they've lost everything. The boardroom doors loomed ahead. Inside, I could hear Lorraine's voice, probably already spinning her version of events. Beside me, Nolan reached for my hand, a perfect show of spousal support for our audience. I let him take it, feeling the weight of his wedding ring against my bare finger. And I smiled, thinking about how much could change in the next 5 minutes. Because Nolan wasn't the only one who knew how to play the long game. The boardroom felt like a courtroom, with 12 pairs of eyes watching my every move. Lorraine sat at one end, perfectly poised in her designer suit, while Tessa hovered near the window, pretending to check her phone. As you can see, Nolan continued his presentation. The transfers were carefully disguised. But once we traced them back to their source, he clicked to the next slide, showing my signature on various documents. My phone vibrated. Jackson, ready when you are. Just say the word. Mrs. Winslow Mercer. Robert Martinez leaned forward. Do you have anything to say in your defense? I stood slowly, feeling Nolan's confident smirk without having to look at him. Actually, I do. But first, I'd like to ask my husband something. I turned to face Nolan. How's the weather in Zurich? His smile flickered. I don't understand. Because according to these, I pulled out my phone and projected Jackson's files onto the screen. You were there last week. With my sister-in-law. In the honeymoon suite of the Grand Hotel. Tessa dropped her phone. Lorraine's perfect posture crumbled. That's not. Nolan started, but I wasn't finished. And while you were there, you opened this account. Another screenshot appeared, using a forged power of attorney with my signature. The same signature that appears on all these documents you're so concerned about. The boardroom erupted in whispers. My father stood up, his face thunderous. There's more, I said quietly. Jackson. The boardroom screen flickered, then filled with security footage. Nolan and Tessa in various hotel lobbies. Lorraine meeting with document forgers. Bank statements showing the real money trail, all leading back to the Mercers. You ungrateful little. Lorraine lunged forward, but security was already moving in.
How?
Nolan's voice cracked. How did you? Your nephew is quite talented with computers, I said. He's been recording your family meetings for months, including the one where you planned to frame me and take control of the company. Martinez was already on his phone, presumably calling his lawyers. The board members were huddled together, speaking in urgent whispers. Ilera, Nolan reached for me, his eyes desperate. Baby, please.
We can fix this.
Everything I did for us. No. I stepped back. You did it for yourself. And your mother. And your sister. The same sister you've been sleeping with for months. Tessa let out a choked sob. It wasn't like that. We were just. Save it for the prosecutors. My father cut in. Security was already escorting them toward the door. Wait, I called out. Everyone froze. I walked up to Nolan, close enough to smell his familiar cologne. You know what the worst part is? I actually loved you. Really loved you. And you couldn't even be bothered to come up with a better password than your sister's name and birth year. His face went white. Behind him, Lorraine started screaming about lawyers and revenge, while Tessa collapsed into dramatic sobs. As they were led away, my phone buzzed one last time. Jackson. There's a recording of them planning to run tonight. Sending to the police now. And, I'm sorry about everything. I texted back. Don't be. You did the right thing. The boardroom slowly emptied, leaving just me and my parents. Mom wrapped her arms around me while Dad made calls to our legal team. I can't believe they would, Mom started. I can, I said, surprising myself with how steady my voice was. But that's not what matters now. What matters is fixing the damage they've done to the company. And to you. Mom touched my bare ring finger. I looked out the window, watching as security escorted the Mercers to waiting police cars. Nolan looked up, our eyes meeting through the glass. For a moment, I saw a flash of the man I thought I'd married, charming, ambitious, seemingly perfect. Then he was gone, and I felt something inside me finally break free. I'll be fine, I said, turning back to my parents. But first, we have work to do. Because sometimes the best revenge isn't about getting even. Sometimes it's about getting better. 3 days after the boardroom showdown, I sat across from Nolan in an interrogation room at the Denver Police Department. His designer suit had been replaced by orange prison scrubs, but somehow he still looked like he was the one in control. You really think this will fix anything? He asked, his voice soft. Destroying our family? Our family. I laughed, but it sounded hollow even to me. Was it our family when you were sleeping with your sister? Or when you and your mother planned to frame me for embezzlement? He leaned forward, chains rattling. Everything I did because I loved you too much. You were always so perfect, so untouchable. The golden Winslow air. Don't. But you're not perfect anymore, are you? His smile was gentle, almost sad. Check your phone. As if on cue, it buzzed. A news alert. Winslow Wellness stock plummets amid family scandal. CEO Grant Winslow steps down. My hands started shaking. What did you do? Me? Nothing. But Lorraine has friends in interesting places. And Tessa, well, she always knew how to work the press. Another buzz. This time from Jackson. They're releasing everything. All of it. Even the stuff about you and Dad's gambling problem cover-up last year. The room spun. That was supposed to be buried. The time I'd used company funds to cover my father's secret gambling debts. Only 3 people knew about that. Me, Dad, and how long have you been planning this? I whispered. Since the day we met. Nolan's eyes softened. You were so busy protecting your family's legacy, you never noticed I was building a case against you. Everything backed up, documented, ready to go if you ever turned on us. My phone kept buzzing. Messages from the board, from reporters, from Dad's lawyer. Each one worse than the last. You could still fix this, Nolan said quietly. Drop the charges.
Come home.
We'll weather this storm together, like we always have. For a moment, one terrible, weak moment, I considered it. Then I remembered Jackson's recordings, the look in Tessa's eyes when she talked about Nolan. The way Lorraine had planned my downfall over Sunday dinners. No. I stood up. You don't get to win this time. I already have. He sat back, chains clinking. Your father's finished. The company's tanking. And now everyone knows the perfect Alara Winslow is just as corrupt as the rest of us. I reached for the door, but his next words stopped me cold. By the way, you never asked who sent that first anonymous letter. The one that started all this. I turned slowly. Jackson said. Jackson did what he was told. By his grandmother. Nolan's smile widened. Mom knew you'd investigate. Knew you'd find exactly what we wanted you to find. And knew you'd be so focused on exposing us, you'd never notice we were really exposing you. The truth hit me like a physical blow. We'd all been played, me, Jackson, even Tessa. This had been Lorraine's plan all along. My phone buzzed one final time. A message from my mother. Come home now. Your father's had a heart attack. I left without looking back at Nolan, but I could feel his eyes on me. In the parking lot, reporters were already gathering, shouting questions about family betrayal and financial fraud. I got in my car, hands gripping the steering wheel until my knuckles turned white. Everything I'd done to protect my family had somehow destroyed them instead. The company was failing, Dad was in the hospital, and now everyone would know about the gambling cover-up. Lorraine had won. She'd turned my revenge into my own undoing. But as I pulled out of the parking lot, dodging reporters and camera flashes, I remembered something my father once told me. Rock bottom is just the foundation you build on. I grabbed my phone and dialed Jackson's number. Because if the Mercers had taught me anything, it was that family secrets work both ways. And I was done playing defense. I found Lorraine in her country club's private dining room, calmly sipping champagne like she hadn't just orchestrated my family's destruction. The room was empty except for us, fitting for what I was about to do. I wondered when you'd figure it out, she said, not looking up from her glass. Nolan always said you were clever. Just not clever enough. I placed my phone on the table between us, screen up. Clever enough to record everything you just said to the SEC investigator in the parking lot. Her hand trembled slightly, champagne sloshing. What are you talking about? The one you paid to bury evidence about your involvement in the Martinez deal. The same evidence Jackson's been collecting for months, ever since you first started planning this takedown. Jackson. For the first time, uncertainty crossed her face. He wouldn't. Your grandson's been working with the FBI's cybercrime division for 6 months, I said, watching her perfect composure crack. Turns out he's quite the prodigy. And very interested in corporate fraud cases. The dining room door opened. Tessa burst in, mascara streaked down her face. Mom, they're arresting Nolan again. Something about offshore accounts in both our names. Sit down, Tessa, I said quietly. Your mother needs to hear this too. Tessa froze, looking between us. What's going on? Show them. Jackson's voice came from behind her. He stepped into the room, laptop in hand. Show them everything. Lorraine stood up so fast her chair toppled. Jackson, whatever you think you're doing. I'm doing what you taught me, he said, setting up his laptop. Family first, right? Except I finally figured out which family deserves loyalty. The screen filled with documents, recordings, bank statements, 3 years of meticulously gathered evidence. Lorraine's master plan to use me to take control of Winslow Wellness. Tessa and Nolan's affair, carefully orchestrated to ensure maximum damage when revealed. Every manipulation, every lie, every calculated move. You were never the target, I told Tessa, whose face had gone ash-white. You were just another pawn in your mother's game. Like Nolan. Like all of us. That's not. Lorraine started, but Jackson cut her off. I have the recordings from your study, Grandma. The ones where you told Mom that Nolan was just doing his part, that sleeping with her would make the scandal more devastating. Tessa made a sound like she'd been struck. Mom, everything I did was for this family. Lorraine's voice shook. To give us what we deserve. Save it, I interrupted. The FBI has everything. So does the SEC. And in about 30 seconds, so will every major news outlet in the country. As if on cue, phones started buzzing throughout the room. Breaking news alerts lit up screens. Mercer family fraud scheme exposed. Winslow Wellness heir cleared of all charges. You can't, Lorraine whispered. I already did. I stood up. The company's stock is already recovering. Dad's doctors say the stress of your little scheme probably saved his life. They caught a blocked artery during his cardiac exam. And Nolan? Well, he's agreed to testify against both of you in exchange for a reduced sentence. Tessa collapsed into a chair, sobbing. Lorraine remained standing, her perfect posture finally broken. You really think you've won? She asked. No, I said, gathering my things. I think we all lost something here. The difference is I'm done playing games. I headed for the door, then paused. Oh, and Lorraine? The country club board voted this morning. Your membership's been revoked. As I walked out, Jackson fell into step beside me. That was pretty badass, he said. You're the badass. I bumped his shoulder. FBI Cybercrime Division? Really? He grinned. Turns out there are better ways to handle family drama than embezzlement and affair. Behind us, we could hear Lorraine's carefully constructed world crumbling. But ahead of us was something better than revenge, a chance to build something new from the ashes of what we'd lost. And this time, we'd build it on truth. 1 year later, I stood in front of the mirror in my office at Winslow Wellness, adjusting my blazer before the press conference. The company had not just recovered, we'd grown stronger, more transparent, more ethical. Sometimes the worst storms clear the air. A knock at the door. They're ready for you, Jackson said, looking professional in his summer intern badge. He traded his hoodies for button-downs, at least during office hours. How's your mom? I asked, gathering my notes. Better. The therapy's helping. She's talking about maybe opening her own business, something small. He paused. She asked about you, actually. I nodded, remembering the last time I'd seen Tessa, at Nolan's sentencing. She looked lost, broken, but somehow more real than she ever had at Lorraine's perfectly staged family dinners. And your grandmother? Still not speaking to me. He shrugged, but I caught the hurt in his eyes. The prison psychiatrist says she's not ready to accept responsibility. The boardroom was packed when we entered. Dad sat at the head of the table, looking healthier than he had in years. Mom squeezed my hand as I passed, her smile proud and a little sad. Before we begin, I addressed the room. I want to acknowledge something. A year ago, this company almost fell apart because we forgot what matters most. Not profit margins or stock prices, but integrity.
Trust.
Real family values, not just the ones we put in our mission statement. Cameras flashed as I continued. Today, we're announcing a new initiative. The Winslow Foundation for Corporate Ethics, with a focus on preventing financial fraud and supporting whistleblowers. And I'm proud to announce our first scholarship recipient, Jackson Mercer, who'll be attending MIT's cybersecurity program this fall. The applause was genuine. Jackson ducked his head, embarrassed but pleased. After the press conference, I found a familiar envelope on my desk. Inside was a letter from Nolan, postmarked from prison. I heard about the foundation, he'd written. You always were better at building things than destroying them. I'm sorry I made you choose between the two. I slipped the letter into my drawer without responding. Some bridges stay burned, and that's okay. My phone buzzed, a text from an unknown number.
Proud of you, sis.
T. I smiled, remembering something Dad had told me during his recovery. The hardest part of betrayal isn't the pain. It's deciding what to do with the pieces afterward. The elevator dinged, and Robert Martinez stepped out. Miss Winslow?
Got a minute?
There's something you should know about some of Lorraine's old contacts. Actually, I cut him off. I have a meeting. But our compliance team would love to hear what you know. I nodded to Jackson, who was already pulling up a recording app on his tablet. Martinez paled slightly, but followed Jackson to the conference room. Later that evening, I stood in my new apartment, watching the sunset paint Denver's skyline. The wall where Nolan's family photos once hung now displayed my degrees, awards, and a framed letter from the FBI thanking me for my cooperation in the Mercer case.
My doorbell rang.
Mom stood there with takeout and a bottle of wine. Thought you might want company tonight. How did you know? She smiled. Because it's your wedding anniversary. And because I'm your mother. We ate on my balcony, talking about everything and nothing. About Dad's golf game improving, about Jackson's college plans, about the company's future. You know, Mom said finally, revenge and redemption often look the same at first. The difference is in what you build afterward. I thought about Nolan's letter, about Tessa's text, about Lorraine's silence, about all the ways family can break and heal and transform. I'm not interested in revenge anymore, I said, surprising myself with how true it felt. I'm interested in truth, in growth, in real legacy. Mom raised her glass. To new foundations. To new foundations, I echoed, watching the last light fade from the sky. Because sometimes the best revenge isn't about getting even or moving on. Sometimes it's about growing beyond the person you were when you were hurt and helping others do the same. I never thought my life would unravel because of a piece of paper, but that's exactly what happened on a random Tuesday in March. The letter was sitting on my desk when I arrived at the bakery, tucked beneath a stack of invoices I'd left to process the night before. My name is Mallory, and until that morning, I thought I had everything figured out. The family bakery my brother Ethan and I ran was thriving. My marriage to Luke was comfortable, if not exactly passionate. And I had finally mastered our grandmother's impossible-to-replicate chocolate croissant recipe. But that letter changed everything. Someone close to you isn't who they appear to be. Watch the numbers. They don't lie. The message was typed and signed except for a single L at the bottom. My first thought was that it was a joke, maybe one of our employees playing a prank. But something about it made my stomach twist. I was still staring at it when Ethan walked in, carrying the scent of fresh bread and coffee with him. "Earth to Mal," he said, waving his hand in front of my face. "The morning rush starts in 20, and you're sitting here like you've seen a ghost." I quickly folded the letter and shoved it into my pocket. "Just reviewing these invoices," I lied, forcing a smile. Ethan gave me that big brother look he's perfected over the years, the one that says he knows I'm full of it but won't push. "Well, while you're reviewing things, maybe take a look at the new numbers Izzy put together. Something feels off about them." He dropped another stack of papers on my desk. "Izzy, our new finance director. Luke had recommended her for the position 6 months ago, swearing by her credentials. She was good at her job, maybe too good. Every time I tried to review her work, she had a perfectly reasonable explanation for any discrepancy I found. I'll check them today, I promised, but my mind was already spinning. The letter. The numbers. Watch the numbers. The morning rush kept me busy enough to push aside my worries, but they came flooding back when Luke texted to say he'd be working late again. 3rd time this week. I typed and deleted several responses before settling on a simple okay. That evening, after the last customer left and Ethan headed home, I stayed behind to look at those numbers Izzy had prepared. Really look at them this time. 2 hours later, my eyes were burning, but I'd found something. Small discrepancies, carefully hidden in routine transactions. Individually, they were nothing. Together, they painted a disturbing picture. My phone buzzed. "Luke again. Don't wait up." Big story breaking. I stared at his message, thinking about all his late nights lately, about how he'd pushed for Izzy's hiring, about how distant he'd been. The pieces were there, but I couldn't, or wouldn't, put them together. The bell above the front door chimed, making me jump. "Sorry, we're closed." I called out, but footsteps were already approaching my office. Izzy appeared in the doorway, her usually perfect appearance slightly disheveled. She stopped short when she saw me surrounded by financial reports. Something flickered across her face. Surprise? Fear? Before her professional mask slipped back into place. "Mallory, I didn't expect anyone to still be here," she said, smoothing her skirt. "I just forgot my phone charger." I watched her retrieve it from her desk, noting how her hands trembled slightly. "Everything okay, Izzy?" "Of course," she replied too quickly. "Just tired. Big project, you know how it is." As she hurried out, I noticed something fall from her purse, a receipt from the Grand Hotel downtown. The same hotel where Luke said he was meeting his sources for his latest story. I picked up the receipt with shaking hands, and suddenly the letter's warning felt less like a mystery and more like a ticking bomb. Whatever was happening, I had a feeling my comfortable life was about to explode. That night, I made 2 decisions. I would hire a private investigator. And I wouldn't tell anyone, not even Ethan, until I knew exactly what I was dealing with. Sometimes the people closest to you are the ones you need to watch the most carefully. The next morning, I couldn't look Luke in the eye as he rushed through breakfast, claiming another early meeting. I watched him dump his coffee in the sink, barely touched, and noticed how he checked his phone 3 times in 2 minutes. When had this become our normal? "You're working too hard," I said, trying to keep my voice casual. "Maybe we should take that weekend trip to the coast we talked about?" Luke paused at the door, his hand already on the handle. "Can't right now, Mel. Big story breaking. Maybe next month?" He was gone before I could respond, leaving behind only the fading scent of his cologne and another hollow promise. At the bakery, Ethan was already in full swing, charming the morning regulars with his usual easy banter. But I caught him watching Izzy through the office window, his smile fading whenever she walked past. "Something's not right with the new contracts," he said later, cornering me in the storage room. "Luke's friend isn't as brilliant as he claimed." I nearly dropped the bag of flour I was holding. "What do you mean?" "Izzy's restructured our supplier agreements. Says it'll save us money, but..." He ran a hand through his hair, a nervous habit from childhood. "The terms are weird, Mel. Like they're designed to fail." Before I could respond, Izzy appeared in the doorway. "Oh, sorry to interrupt," she said, though her expression suggested she wasn't sorry at all. "Mallory, could you sign these? They need to go out today." She held out a stack of papers. "I'll look them over first," I said. Something flickered in her eyes. "They're time-sensitive. Luke said you'd be fine with them." "Luke doesn't run this bakery," Ethan cut in, his voice sharp. "We do." The tension in the room was thick enough to cut with one of our bread knives. Izzy's perfectly maintained smile cracked just slightly before she recovered. "Of course. Take your time." She turned on her heel and left. "Since when does Luke approve our paperwork?" Ethan asked quietly. I shook my head, remembering the hotel receipt. "I need to tell you something," I started, but my phone buzzed. A text from Luke, working late again. "Don't wait up." Ethan read the message over my shoulder and made a disgusted sound. "You know what? I know a guy. Private investigator. Used him when I thought Jenny was cheating during my divorce." "Was she?" "No. But at least I knew for sure." He squeezed my shoulder. "Sometimes it's better to know, Mal, even if the truth hurts." That evening, I stayed late again, digging deeper into our accounts. The numbers were like a puzzle where all the pieces looked right but created the wrong picture. Small discrepancies, clever redirections, all pointing to something bigger. I was so absorbed that I didn't hear Luke come in until he spoke from the doorway. "You're working too hard." I nearly jumped out of my skin. "Jesus, Luke. What are you doing here? Can't a husband surprise his wife?" He smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "Brought you dinner." He held up a bag from my favorite restaurant. As he set up the food on my desk, I noticed a smudge of lipstick on his collar, coral pink. The same shade Izzy wore. My stomach churned. "Actually, I'm not hungry," I said. "And I have a lot of work to finish." "Come on, Mal. When did you become so distant?" The irony of his words hit me like a slap. I wanted to scream, to demand answers, to ask about the lipstick and the hotel and all the late nights. Instead, I said, "I could ask you the same thing." He stiffened, then checked his phone. Again. "Look, if you're going to be difficult, I'll just go. Some of us have real work to do, not just playing with family recipes in a bakery." The dismissive tone, the subtle dig at the business my grandparents had built, something snapped inside me. "Yes," I said coldly. "You should go. I'm sure your work is waiting." After he left, I pulled out the business card Ethan had slipped me earlier. Marcus Lee, private investigator. My hands shook as I dialed the number, but my voice was steady when I spoke. "I need your help uncovering the truth about my husband." Marcus Lee's office smelled like old coffee and resignation. He sat across from me, methodically spreading surveillance photos across his desk like he was dealing cards in a game I was already losing. 3 weeks of observation, he said, his voice gentle but firm. "Your husband and Miss Green meet at the Grand Hotel every Tuesday and Thursday. Always room 412. He slid another photo forward, Luke and Izzy entering the elevator together, his hand on the small of her back. The timestamp showed 2:14 p.m. last Tuesday, right when he'd texted me about his breaking story. My throat felt like I'd swallowed ground glass. The meetings? How long? Usually 2 hours. Marcus hesitated. But that's not the worst part. He pulled out financial records, bank statements, transfer receipts. The numbers danced before my eyes, but even through my shock, I could see the pattern. Money moving between accounts, small amounts that added up to something massive. "They're bleeding your bakery dry," Marcus said. Slowly, carefully, but it's happening. "The new supplier contracts? They're funneling money through shell companies. Your husband's name is on all of them." The room tilted sideways. I gripped the edge of the desk, my knuckles white. "How much?" "Close to 200,000 so far. They're good at hiding it." A knock at the door made me jump. Marcus's assistant poked her head in. "Sorry to interrupt, but there's someone here asking for Mrs. Jennings. Says it's urgent." Ethan burst in before she finished speaking. His face was flushed, eyes wild. "Mal, thank God. You need to get back to the bakery. Now." "What's wrong?" Luke showed up with some guys in suits. "They're doing an audit. Said it's standard procedure, but they're going through everything. Izzy's helping them." My stomach dropped. The photos were still spread across Marcus's desk, damning evidence of both personal and professional betrayal. I gathered them quickly, shoving them into my bag. "They're trying to cover their tracks," Marcus said, standing. "Or worse, they're setting up a paper trail to blame someone else." The drive back to the bakery was a blur. When we arrived, the morning rush had slowed to a trickle, and 3 men in expensive suits were camped out in our office. Luke stood by the door, arms crossed, looking every bit the concerned husband. "Mal, where have you been?" he asked, reaching for me. I stepped back, my skin crawling. "These gentlemen are helping us identify some irregularities in our books." "Irregularities?" I kept my voice steady, though my heart was hammering. "Like the shell companies you've been using to steal from us?" The color drained from his face. Behind him, Izzy dropped the file she was holding, papers scattering across the floor. "I don't know what you're talking about," Luke said, but his eyes darted to Izzy, who was frantically gathering the fallen documents. "Room 412, I said quietly. "Every Tuesday and Thursday." The silence that followed was deafening. One of the suits cleared his throat. "Perhaps we should continue this another time." "No," I said, pulling out the photos and financial records. "Let's continue right now. I'm sure these gentlemen would be very interested in seeing exactly where our money's been going." Luke's charm vanished like smoke. "You had me followed?" His voice was ugly, dangerous. "You really want to do this here, Mal? In front of everyone? Better than doing it behind my back, like you've been doing everything else." Izzy suddenly straightened, her face set. "It wasn't supposed to go this far," she said. "Luke promised no one would get hurt." "Shut up," Luke snapped, but Izzy kept talking. "He said it was just business, that the bakery could afford it. But then he wanted more and more and—" Luke moved toward her, but Ethan was faster, stepping between them. "Touch her, and you'll regret it." The suits were packing up their briefcases, looking uncomfortable. One of them paused at the door. "Mrs. Jennings, you might want to contact your lawyer." "Soon." I watched them leave, then turned back to my husband, the stranger I'd shared my life with. "How long were you planning this?" His laugh was hollow. "Since the day your brother made it clear I'd never have a real place here. It's always been about the precious family bakery, hasn't it? Well, now it's about survival. Let's see how well your family legacy holds up in court." The threat hung in the air like poison, and I realized this was just the beginning of a war I never wanted to fight. The morning after the confrontation, I found our bakery's front window smashed. Shards of glass glittered on the sidewalk like cruel confetti, and spray-painted across our storefront in angry red letters was one word: liar. Ethan arrived while I was still staring at the damage. "I've called the police," he said, putting an arm around my shoulders. "Security cameras caught everything." It was Luke. Of course it was. My husband, soon-to-be ex-husband, had always been dramatic when cornered. But this felt different. Desperate. Inside, while waiting for the police, I discovered my office had been ransacked. Files were missing, my computer screen cracked. But strangest of all was what had been left behind, a framed photo from our opening day 5 years ago, showing Luke, Ethan, and me cutting the ribbon. The glass was broken, and Luke's face had been carefully scratched out. "Mrs. Jennings?" A quiet voice made me turn. Izzy stood in the doorway, looking smaller somehow without her usual professional armor. "I need to tell you something. About Luke. About everything." Before she could continue, Marcus appeared behind her. "Maybe we should all talk somewhere more private." We gathered in the back office. Me, Ethan, Marcus, and Izzy. The morning sun streamed through the windows, casting strange shadows across our faces as Izzy began to speak. "Luke didn't start this," she said, hands trembling around a cup of untouched coffee. "He was recruited. There's someone else, someone bigger behind it all." "Who?" Ethan demanded. "James Morrison." The name hit me like a physical blow. James, our father's oldest friend, the man who'd helped us secure the loans to buy this place after Dad died. He'd been like a second father to us. "That's impossible," Ethan said, but I could hear the doubt in his voice. Izzy pulled out her phone, played a recording. Luke's voice filled the room. "James says if we do this right, everyone wins. The bakery goes under, he buys it cheap, develops the property. We get our cut, and the Jennings siblings learn a hard lesson about family loyalty." My stomach churned. "Why are you showing us this now?" "Because Luke's spiraling," Izzy whispered. "He wanted to hurt you, yes, but James? He wants to destroy everything your family built. And after last night." She swallowed hard. "Luke called James in a panic. I heard him say that if the bakery won't go down quietly, there are other ways to force a sale." Marcus leaned forward. "Like what?" "Health code violations. Food poisoning allegations. Anonymous tips about tax fraud. They're planning to hit you from every angle until you're forced to sell." The room fell silent except for the distant sound of police radios outside. I looked at the damaged photo again, at Luke's scratched-out face, and felt something shift inside me. This wasn't just about betrayal anymore. This was war. "Why should we trust you?" Ethan asked Izzy. She pulled out a USB drive. "Because I've been copying everything. Every transaction, every email, every meeting recording. I thought I was part of something legitimate at first. By the time I realized the truth, Luke had already implicated me in enough illegal activities to ruin my life." Marcus took the drive, studied it. "This could help. But they'll know you turned on them." "I know," Izzy said quietly. "That's why I'm leaving town tonight. But first, there's something else you need to know. The anniversary celebration next week? James and Luke are planning to use it to announce their new development project. They're going to humiliate you in front of everyone who matters in this town." I stood up, walked to the window. Outside, customers were already gathering, drawn by the police presence and the vandalism. Our loyal customers, our community, the people who'd supported us through everything. "No," I said, turning back to face them. "They're not going to humiliate us. Because we're going to be ready for them." Ethan's eyes met mine, and I saw the same determination there. "What are you thinking, Mal?" "I'm thinking it's time to show James and Luke what happens when you mistake kindness for weakness." I looked at Marcus. "Can you help us set a trap?" He nodded slowly. "With Izzy's evidence and the right timing." "Yes, but it's risky." "So is destroying someone's life," I said, picking up the broken photo. "They should have remembered that before they started this game." 3 days before the anniversary celebration, I found James Morrison sitting in our kitchen, drinking coffee with Luke like nothing had changed. Like they hadn't tried to destroy everything my family had built. "Mallory," James said warmly, standing to embrace me. I let his arms wrap around me, fighting the urge to recoil. "We've been discussing solutions to this unfortunate situation." I caught Luke's eye over James's shoulder. My husband looked exhausted, haunted even, but there was something else there, a glimmer of triumph that made my skin crawl. "Solutions?" I kept my voice neutral, remembering Marcus's warning, "Let them think they're winning." "The development project could save this neighborhood," James said, settling back into his chair. Your parents would have understood that sometimes progress requires sacrifice. The casual mention of my parents sent a surge of rage through me, but I forced myself to sit down. Tell me about this project. As James launched into his pitch about luxury condos and boutique retail spaces, I noticed Luke's hands trembling slightly around his coffee cup. He'd always been a terrible liar when cornered. We're prepared to be generous, James continued. Above market value for the property, plus a consulting position for both you and Ethan in the new development. How long have you been planning this? I asked, watching Luke flinch at the question. James's smile never wavered. Sometimes opportunities present themselves at unexpected moments. Luke mentioned your financial struggles, which you engineered. I cut in, unable to help myself. The temperature in the room seemed to drop. James's smile turned sharp. Careful, Mallory. Accusations like that could be problematic, especially given the recent health code complaints. My phone buzzed, a text from Marcus, documents secured. Health inspector confirms attempted bribe. Moving to phase 2. I need time to think, I said, standing up. And to discuss this with Ethan. Of course, James replied smoothly. But don't take too long. These opportunities have a way of disappearing, sometimes along with everything else. After they left, I called Ethan. They took the bait. Marcus just called. Said the health inspector recorded everything. James tried to bribe him to shut us down. I started gathering ingredients, my hands moving automatically through the motions of our grandmother's chocolate croissant recipe. Baking had always helped me think. Mal? Ethan's voice softened. Are you sure about tomorrow night? Once we do this. They're going to announce their project at our anniversary celebration either way, I said, measuring flour with perhaps more force than necessary. Might as well make it memorable. Luke called me, Ethan said quietly. Tried to convince me to talk you into selling. Said things could get ugly if we don't play along. The dough under my hands felt suddenly too soft, too yielding. Like everything else in my life lately. Did he mention what happened to Mom and Dad's original loan documents? No, but Marcus found them. In James's private safe. Along with proof he's been planning this since before Dad died. He's been playing the long game, Mal. Something inside me hardened. I thought about all the Sunday dinners James had attended, all the times he'd called me daughter, all while plotting to take everything we had. My phone buzzed again, another text, this time from Izzy. Luke knows I helped you. He's threatening to go to the police about the financial records. Let him, I typed back. Everything's in place. I looked around our kitchen, where Mom had taught me to bake, where Dad had dreamed up new recipes, where Luke and I had once planned our future. Ethan, I said, call Marcus. Tell him to move everything up. We're doing this tonight. Tonight? But the celebration. They're expecting us to wait. To be predictable. And that's exactly why we're not going to. I hung up and started cleaning the flour from my hands. The dough would have to wait. I had a different recipe to follow now, one that would serve revenge cold, with a side of justice. Let them think they had me cornered. Let them believe I was still the same passive, trusting person they'd chosen to betray. Tomorrow, they'd learn what happened when you pushed someone too far. Sometimes the quiet ones were the most dangerous. And I'd been quiet long enough. The bakery was packed for the impromptu community appreciation night we'd announced just hours ago. I watched from the kitchen as Luke and James worked the room, shaking hands and sharing knowing smiles. They thought they were here to announce their victory. Instead, they were walking into their own execution. Ready? Ethan asked, adjusting the microphone setup near our display counter. I nodded, though my hands shook as I arranged the last pastry tray. Each chocolate croissant was perfect, just like Mom used to make. It felt fitting, somehow, that her recipe would witness this. Marcus appeared at my elbow. Police are outside, waiting for my signal. Health inspector too. But Mal... He hesitated. James just got a call. Something's wrong. Before I could ask what he meant, James clinked his glass for attention. The crowd quieted, and my stomach dropped as I saw his expression, not triumphant, but predatory. Friends, he began, we're here to celebrate more than just community appreciation. We're here to announce an exciting new chapter for this neighborhood. But first, his eyes found mine. Let's address the elephant in the room. Mallory, why don't you tell everyone about the health code violations? Or the tax fraud? The room went silent. Luke stepped forward, holding up papers. We have proof, he said, his voice carrying that journalist's authority I'd once found so attractive. Proof that the beloved Jennings Bakery has been cutting corners, endangering customers, evading taxes. This wasn't part of the plan. They were supposed to announce the development project first. I looked at Marcus, who was frantically checking his phone. They've buried the real documents, he whispered. Someone got to my office. Everything we had is gone. The room started buzzing with concerned whispers. I saw regular customers exchanging worried glances, staff members shifting uncomfortably. That's not true, I said, but my voice sounded weak even to me. No. James pulled out more papers. These bank records show years of suspicious transactions. And these health reports. He shook his head sadly. Mallory, your parents would be so disappointed. Don't you dare talk about my parents, I snapped, but he spoke over me. In fact, I have your father's original loan agreement right here. The one where he specifically named me as the bakery's custodian if anything went wrong. He knew something like this might happen. The document he held up looked authentic, because it was. But not for the reasons he claimed. Tell them the truth, I demanded, stepping forward. Tell them how you forged those papers after Dad died. Tell them about the shell companies, the bribes, everything. Luke laughed, the sound cutting through me like glass. Shell companies? Bribes? Everyone, my wife is clearly struggling with the stress of running a failing business. We're only trying to help. By stealing everything my family built? My voice cracked. By saving what's left of it, James corrected smoothly. The police are already investigating the fraud. But I'm willing to make this go away quietly, if you sign over the bakery now. I looked around the room, saw doubt and confusion on every face. Even our most loyal customers were wavering. Years of trust, destroyed in minutes. Mal, Ethan warned, but I was already moving. I grabbed the file Marcus had given me earlier, our last copy of the evidence, our final chance. But as I opened it, my blood ran cold. The pages were blank. Looking for these? Luke held up another stack of papers. Amazing what people will give up when their own freedom is at stake. Izzy says hello, by the way. She's somewhere much warmer now, with a new identity and enough money to start fresh. The room spun. Everything we'd planned, every piece of evidence we'd gathered, gone. They'd played us perfectly, using our own scheme against us. You have 10 minutes to sign, James said quietly, sliding the transfer papers across the counter. Before I call the police in. I stared at the document, at the line where I was supposed to sign away my family's legacy. The room felt too hot, too crowded, closing in like the walls of a prison cell. Then I saw it, a small detail in the corner of James's forged loan document. A tiny flaw that changed everything. Maybe we'd lost this battle, but I suddenly knew how to win the war. I picked up the pen, my hand steady for the first time all night. Actually, James, I said, I think you should check those loan papers again. Very, very carefully. His smile faltered, just slightly, and I knew I had him. Sometimes rock bottom is exactly where you need to be to see the truth. The notary stamp, I said, watching James's face carefully. On Dad's loan document. It's dated 3 months after he died. The room went completely still. James's confident smile flickered, then died. A clerical error, he said quickly, but I was already pulling out my phone. Bringing up the photo I'd taken of the original document. The real one. The night before Dad died. No, James. It's fraud. Just like everything else you've done. I turned to address the crowd. My father never signed custody of this bakery over to anyone. James forged that document after Dad died, just like he forged health code violations and fabricated tax records. Luke stepped forward, but Ethan blocked his path. Careful, my brother warned. The police outside might be interested in those bribes you tried to pay the health inspector. You have no proof, Luke snapped, but his voice wavered. Actually, a new voice called from the back, they do. Izzy pushed through the crowd, looking nothing like the polished finance director who'd fled town. I didn't go to somewhere warmer, Luke. I went to the FBI. James lunged for the documents on the counter, but Marcus was faster. Those blank pages, he said, holding them up. Decoys. The real evidence is already with the authorities, including the recordings of every meeting where you planned this. You really should sweep your office for bugs more often, I added, watching James's face turn ashen. Luke's journalist instincts kicked in. He started backing toward the door. I had no idea about the forgery, he said quickly. James told me the development project was legitimate. Save it for your cellmate, Ethan cut in. The FBI has your emails. All of them. The police chose that moment to enter, led by a federal agent who looked far too pleased with himself. James Morrison? Lucas Turner? You're both under arrest for fraud, conspiracy, and attempted extortion. As they were being cuffed, James turned to me, his mask finally cracking. Your father was weak, he spat. He would have lost this place anyway. I was doing you a favor. My father, I said quietly, taught me that patience and loyalty matter more than quick profits. That family isn't just about blood, it's about trust. I picked up one of Mom's chocolate croissants. He also taught me that the best revenge, like the best recipes, takes time to perfect. The crowd parted as the police led them out. Through the window, I could see reporters gathering, drawn by the commotion. Tomorrow, Luke's name would be in the headlines, but not the way he'd planned. Izzy approached me cautiously. I'm sorry it took me so long to do the right thing. You did it when it mattered, I said. That's what counts. As the excitement died down, Marcus pulled me aside. There's something else you should know, he said. That warning letter you received? The one signed L? I wrote it. I stared at him. What? James destroyed my family's business 20 years ago, the same way he tried to destroy yours. I've been tracking him ever since, waiting for a chance to expose him. When I heard about your bakery, he shrugged. Sometimes justice needs a little push. I thought about all the pieces that had led us here, the letter, the investigation, even Izzy's conscience. Each one a necessary ingredient in a recipe for justice. Ethan joined us, throwing an arm around my shoulders. So, he said, what now? I looked around at our bakery, at the familiar walls that held so many memories, at our customers who were already lining up again, showing their support with their presence. Now, I said, we bake. We rebuild. We remember that sometimes the things that try to break us end up making us stronger instead. And Luke. I watched through the window as my soon-to-be ex-husband was placed in a police car. He wanted headlines. Now he'll get them. The morning light was starting to stream through our windows, catching on the display cases and making everything glow. Another day was beginning, and for the first time in months, I could breathe freely. Sometimes the sweetest victory isn't in destroying your enemies, but in surviving them. In proving that what they tried to break was unbreakable all along. 6 months after Luke and James's arrests, I stood in our kitchen, teaching a group of at-risk teens how to make my mother's chocolate croissants. The bakery's new community outreach program was my way of turning betrayal into something beautiful. The secret, I told them, is patience. Good things take time. Through the window, I could see Ethan chatting with customers, his easy charm unchanged by everything we'd been through. The bakery was thriving again, our reputation restored after the truth about James's schemes made headlines. The bell chimed and Marcus walked in, carrying a familiar-looking envelope. Last piece of paperwork, he said, sliding it across the counter. Luke's plea deal is final. He's serving 5 years, James got 12. I nodded, not trusting myself to speak. The envelope contained my final divorce papers, waiting for my signature. As I reached for a pen, one of the teens, Maria, whose mother worked 2 jobs to support her family, spoke up. Miss Jennings? The dough's ready. I smiled, setting the envelope aside. Some things could wait. Later, after the class ended and the day's business wound down, Izzy stopped by. She looked different now, more genuine, less polished. The witness protection program had given her a new start, but she'd chosen to stay nearby, working with the FBI to uncover similar schemes in other communities. "The foundation paperwork is ready," she said, referring to the nonprofit we'd established to help small businesses protect themselves from fraud. "And you'll never guess who called asking to make a donation." "Who?" "Luke. From prison. Says he wants to make amends." I thought about that while closing up, remembering how revenge had tasted less sweet than I'd imagined. Justice had mattered more, and healing most of all. The next morning, I arrived early to bake, just like always. But today was different. Today marked 1 year since that anonymous letter had appeared on my desk. Marcus was waiting outside, looking uncomfortable in a way his usual confident demeanor never allowed. "There's something else you should know," he said. "About why I helped you." He pulled out an old photograph, a family standing in front of a bakery much like ours. "My parents' place," he explained, "before James destroyed it. But here's the thing. Your father tried to stop him back then. Tried to warn my parents, but they didn't listen." The revelation hit me hard. Dad had never mentioned this, but it explained why he'd been so careful with our business, why he'd taught us to value loyalty over profit. "That's why you wrote the letter," I said. "You were repaying a debt." "I was finishing what your father started." James had to be stopped, but it had to come from within, from someone he thought he could manipulate. "You." I thought about how close we'd come to losing everything, how many layers of betrayal and loyalty had brought us to this moment. Was any of it real? "Your help, your concern." "All of it," he said quietly. "Some debts can't be repaid with just justice. Sometimes they need something more." That evening, I sat in Dad's old office, looking at the envelope containing my divorce papers. Next to it sat another envelope, Luke's request to donate to our foundation. And beside that, a stack of applications from more teens wanting to join our baking program. I picked up the photo of our family that Luke had scratched out all those months ago. We'd replaced the broken frame, but kept the damaged photo as a reminder. Not of betrayal, but of growth. Ethan found me there, carrying 2 cups of coffee. "You okay?" "Yeah," I said, and meant it. "Just thinking about recipes." He grinned, knowing I wasn't talking about baking. "The best ones get passed down," he said, "but sometimes they need updating." I signed the divorce papers finally, then reached for the foundation applications. Tomorrow, we'd teach more kids how to bake, how to build, how to trust. And maybe, just maybe, we'd break the cycle that had nearly broken us. Sometimes the sweetest revenge isn't revenge at all. It's creating something new from the ashes of betrayal, something that helps heal not just yourself, but others too. That's the recipe I choose to follow now.